Was that a yes?
Yes, I believe we do.
Okay, very good. So it is a couple minutes after 5:30, so we can go ahead and get started. As we get started, I would just bring to everyone's attention that we have presentations on 10 different areas of the budget this evening. And if we allocate just 30 minutes to each one of those areas, that means we will be spending 3 hours discussing the budget. So I would encourage our presenters to try and keep your presentations to 30 minutes if you can. Otherwise, I think probably what will happen is you'll probably start losing the attention of some of the participants, because it could be a long evening if we don't stay somewhat disciplined. So with that, I will call I'm looking for our work session number. Why am I not seeing it?
Oh, it's possible there isn't one. Give me 1 second and I will tell you where it is.
Looks like I saw it there, Cindy. Go back.
Oh,
I think it was 2005. No, that is
2005, yeah, it looked like.
2005. Yes.
special 05. So 2005. Oh,
Okay, so we will call the Johnston City Council Special Budget Work Session 2005 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Ready? Ready? Soroka?
Here.
Looked
I
like
know.
Suresh was there and then we lost him, so. We will-
Well, maybe he'll come back while I'm reading the COVID-19 statement, which I will
Okay.
proceed to do. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with Governor Reynolds' March 19, 2020 proclamation, suspending the regulatory provisions of Iowa Code Section 21.8 or any other statute imposing a requirement to hold a public meeting or hearing, the City of Johnston will conduct meetings electronically with the public allowed to attend per instructions denoted on the meeting's particular agenda. Meeting minutes will continue to be posted per the city's normal course of business. Cindy, we typically do not receive public comment at work sessions. Obviously, we will if there is anybody here for the action item. But can you tell if there is anybody from the public that is with us this evening?
There is not.
Okay. Well, if
And
at any
Councilmember
point,
Reddy has rejoined us.
okay, perfect. If at any point you see someone as we're going through, at least to the action item, please let me know so that we can find out whether or not they want to speak to the item. With that, we will move on to item number 4, which is an action item. Consider resolution number 20-312, a resolution adopting plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of costs. Consider resolution number 20-313, a resolution making award of construction contract. And consider resolution number 20-314, a resolution approving construction contract and bond for the construction of the Northwest 86th Street side path, Northwest 54th Avenue to Northwest 62nd Avenue. And is this yours, John?
I will take it. We actually had this item at the last council meeting on December 7th. So unless somebody wants a full explanation again of the project and the specifics, I won't go through everything just based on time, but we did receive good bids on this. We had 8 bidders. The low bid was $1,260,000. That is coming from Concrete Connections, LLC. They are the same group that we've worked with on several different projects, including Pioneer Parkway projects. So I think the action that needs to happen is based on the fact that I don't know that all resolutions were read the last time at the council meeting. So if there's any questions on it, I will certainly discuss it further, but I know we have a short amount of time tonight, so wanted to make it as brief as possible.
Okay. Does the council have any questions for John? If not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 20-312?
So
So
moved,
moved.
Martin.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
yes,
Soroka,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes.
Motion passed. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 20-313?
So moved, Martin.
second Suresh,
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
yes,
Soroka,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to approve resolution number 20-314?
So moved, Martin.
second
Second.
Suresh,
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Ready,
yes,
Soroka,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the discussion items. And again, we have several departments that we need to go through this evening. Jim, do you want me to turn it over to you and have you kind of make introductory comments?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of comments. And as the council's aware, this is really sort of it's not really the beginning of our budget process, but the first time we take more of a comprehensive look at what our departments have put together for their budgets. And so we're going to go through a lot of material tonight. Certainly, again, it's sort of the beginning. If you have questions after the presentation this evening that we don't get to tonight, feel free to reach out to staff, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. We're not at a point right now where we can calculate what the tax rate would be. What would happen is that we'll take this information tonight. We should get our valuations in the first week or so of January, and that's when we'd be able to calculate what a property tax rate or what these proposals add up to. And then our next budget hearing, or I guess open or work session, will be on the 19th of January, which is on a Tuesday evening in January, where we will have really all the information that we share tonight, some prioritization decision packages, as well as our property tax rate that will be calculated for the conversation on that evening. So those are just some brief comments. This is really just, again, sort of the beginning of the conversation we have with the council regarding the budget as far as the detail. Teresa, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
Can't figure out where what happened to my thing.
Are you muted?
No, I'm not.
Can I share? I don't know, that's what I was.
Okay. I was just asking Cindy if I could share something, but I don't know what happened to you're controlling Cindy's screen right up here. Click this. You were down here.
That's okay, just do it on mine.
Well, I've got something over here I wanted to show him. Okay, I was going to share my screen. I worked on something this afternoon, and to just briefly give you about 6 highlights. Received questions from a couple councilmen yesterday, and I did send out to you a work product that I'll be working on regarding the decision packages that hopefully gave you some good information. But then I did create another document that I'll share with you that just as of today, and I continue to say as of today, things change each day, but for revenue purposes, I did sorry, Cindy's standing over me, and that messes me up, but okay, it's a
Can't figure out how to get you. Sure, just keep talking.
as of the end of fiscal year 20, although we don't have the audit yet, I'm confident that we have approximately a 28% general fund reserve, which is almost to get to 25%, you'd have about $1 million. Or excuse me, $500,000, not $1 million, $500,000. The preliminary valuation we received last Friday was about half of what we estimated it was going to be from PFM. And so I've been on the phone with Matt as late as 4:30 today. Part of the issue is one of the TIF valuations. I'm going to refile a certification on TIF 5 to release some valuation back so that it affects the general fund. And doing that would give us about another $84,000, which might not sound like much to you right now, but that's about 5.5 cents on the levy. Currently on the preliminary valuation, 1 cent is $15,466. So we ask that every year. And then the last information I wanted you to get, which I'll just email out this sheet to you, had to do, well, there's 2 things actually. The state of Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund, the city did receive $536,696,000 of revenue. And we received that on November 22nd, or excuse me, November 13th. That's not included in that other $500,000 I told you that we had in the reserve. That's above the 25%. Still making sure what we can actually spend that money on. That money was generated or given to us based on what we actually paid in wages for police and fire. So of that figure, 536,000, about 63.25% was police and about 36.75 was fire. So I guess, again, have in the back of your head that it's out there. And sorry, I thought this was going to let me get to my document. It's not. Then the last piece then has to do with local option sales tax. And the state amended the estimate that they gave me. So even though I sent you information of an estimate, they amended it after they did that. And then when I called them to question why I wasn't getting what they told me we were supposed to get on the estimate, they're like, didn't you get the amended estimate? And I was like, no. So the amended estimate was down to 2.4 million. So 2,425,839. Budgeted in this year is 2.2 million. So I did budget less than they estimate that we're going to get, which is good. Of that 2.2 million, we did budget to transfer 2.15, so $2,150,000 of that total lost money. So the discussion amongst my colleagues is, what are they going to do for next year? Based on what they've told us is happening. They did have a better June than they thought they were going to have, but bottom line is most other cities are just estimating the same that they estimated this year because of COVID. They're just not sure that they're going to get that much more. So that was going to be my intention, to budget 2.2 million again, but know that when we did get our true up in November, for the half a year of 2020, when we collected for a half a year, we received 1.5 million. So that's more like 3 million, which is kind of what we estimated clear back when we said we were going to do this election. So That's a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you guys. I'll give you this piece of paper that has it summarized that I just told you. But as I told Councilman Cope yesterday, nothing bothers me more than giving you a wrong piece of information. So I get really jittery about giving you these estimates because things change. And quite frankly, I don't want any of you to hold me to some number I just told you because it's such a moving target for me. But I also don't want to keep secrets from you. So just know that this is all the stuff that's going on up here in my head. And as we work on things and as we work through department budgets, know that that's what the department heads are hearing from me all the time. And the fact that the valuation came in, you know, almost 2% lower than we anticipated was really a gut punch to me because just the regular operating budget requests are probably more than that they are more than that 2.8. So in that case, then, you know, do you fund any decision packages or do you use the reserve or all these things that you folks as the elected body get to make that decision come January when I have a little firmer numbers. But I know that was a lot, but I kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit. The department heads heard all this from me this morning. And I'll go ahead and let Eric, I believe, Mayor, he's the first one on your agenda is the library. And I think Katie was going to join us too.
I
Eric.
saw that she was on there. Before we shift to Eric, Teresa, can you real quickly remind everyone in terms of what the timeline is for the budget process? This is the beginning, but can you just real quickly remind us?
It is the timeline, and we'll have to have the public hearing on the maximum property tax threshold. Remember that hearing that we have to have. I plan that we need to have that hearing at the March 1st council meeting. All right. And then we will be having the regular budget public hearing at the March 15th council meeting. The law did change. Budgets don't have to be certified till March 31st. So if something happens, we have to have special council meetings or whatever, we could always do that. But those dates I gave you were based on our normally regularly scheduled meetings. So as Jim said, we'll have probably a good hard-working session at the January. That's what I have on my schedule, a January work session. And then I also have another work session at the first meeting in February. And then at your second meeting in February is when you would order the public hearing for the maximum property tax threshold. Outside agencies will be presenting their budget requests to you at the first council meeting in January.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Eric, are we ready?
My meeting controls just went away. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'll turn it over to Katie Fiala, the board president, in a second. I wanted to point out that the attachment for the library budget on the agenda item includes a spreadsheet and also a sort of narrative for each of the budget years we'll be discussing. On FY22, next to each collection of budget lines, you'll see a comparison between what's being proposed and budget amendment 1. I just wanted to point out that you haven't seen budget amendment 1. This document is something the library board voted on in November. I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. The first budget amendment, which Teresa could probably say when that's coming up. For the library, we're not asking for any more money, so just keep that in mind. So the sum of the changes that are in the parentheses on that FY22 document are not going to be different from the budget that the council approved for the library last year. That was probably more information than you needed. Anyway, I've shared my screen for the budget narrative for FY22, and I'll turn it over to Katie to outline some of the details.
Thanks, Eric. And I'll be conscious of the mayor's request and be conscious of all of your time tonight. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of these narrative documents. So for fiscal year 22, we're expecting resources to remain, other than our city funding, to remain similar to fiscal year 21. The change is we are adjusting down due to an anticipated vote by our board this week to eliminate overdue fines on books and audiobooks for children and young adults. We know that income from our state programs is uncertain, and so we have budgeted those conservatively. For our salary, wages, and benefits item, we're looking at an increase of approximately $63,300, or an increase of 6.5% from that amendment Eric mentioned. And that's the same wage increase for full-time staff as those staff received in fiscal year 21. For our part-time staff, this is an ongoing project. The library, our part-time positions pay less than other metro area libraries and other retail positions. And so we've given larger increases to those part-time staff for the last several fiscal years. So for fiscal year 22, we've budgeted 3.5% for library assistants, 4% for library associates, and 4.5% for clerks and shelvers, and that is our lowest paid position. For benefits and costs, the city has predicted a 10% increase in health and benefit over fiscal year 21, so we've reflected that. Our staff development line looks like a large increase, but it's because our travel and training opportunities were limited in the last fiscal year due to COVID-19, and so we reduced those budget lines, and we've restored this to our pre-COVID-19 levels for this proposal. On repair, maintenance, and utilities, we're looking at an increase of approximately $7,900, and that's for slight increases due to an increase in HVAC repairs in recent years and anticipated inflation in natural gas, electric, and carpet cleaning. For contractual services, we've got another slight increase, and we are seeing an increase in adult and children's programming to pre-COVID-19 levels. One second. Can you step out, sweetie? On our commodities line, we have a decrease, and this is because we are restoring our furniture and fixtures line to a typical amount following an increase we had last year for our teen space project. And the other decrease is from putting our e-book budget line back to a pre-COVID-19 level, which we had increased for COVID-19. Capital outlays, small decrease there. And then our library trust, we are able to withdraw up to 50% of our trust balance each fiscal year. And as of October, the trust balance totaled just about $47,000, and we budgeted a $24,000 withdrawal for fiscal year 22. Sorry, got to chase a kid out of here. 1 second.
What are you doing?
Eric, can you remind us what the library trust funds are used for? Can't hear you.
Sorry. This is a fund that's paid into by Mid-American Energy for the privilege of operating in Johnston. That's my understanding of how it was established. I've never seen an official document that says this. My understanding based on past practice is that it's typically earmarked for technology for the library.
Okay.
Teresa, is that a utility franchise fee?
Mediacom.
MediaCom, yes, MediaCom.
Okay.
I thought the question was how we use those funds. Is that what you were asking, Mayor, or were you asking where they come from?
It was, but it was interesting to hear where they come from. It sounds like
It was. I agree, but that and that was good to know. But I think the question was how are those? So the 24,000 that's budgeted, are those used for materials or general budget or whatever?
Like I said, the previous director, her understanding was that those were to be used for library technology. in practice, that money is transferred into the library's operating budget and kind of spread out amongst budget lines. It's not something that I write a check out of that specific account for a particular thing, if that makes sense.
I have a question, Katie or Eric. You stated that salary and wages for part-time, you gave us the percent raise, but for full-time staff, you said that their percent raise would be the same as last year's. Can you tell me what that is?
Those are like other full-time staff in the city. Those are going to be based on evaluations and also on where each staff member is at in their salary range.
So
Well,
what's included in the budget, Councilwoman Martin, is 3% for non-union. All unions were 3% and non-union are 3%. Plus there's 25,000 that's usually put in there to put as the performance pay.
Okay.
I brought up the spreadsheet here. I know you can't see the names of each full-time staff member, but they're the lines above this gray line here, and the percent increase for each is shown under this wage notes.
Okay.
So depending on, again, we won't get into too long, just like I talked about, depending on where they fall in a quartile, depends on what kind of raise they get so that they get closest to market, as long as they have a good performance review.
Thank you.
Any questions about FY22 before we go on to FY23?
Okay, so I'll just briefly talk about fiscal year 23. So for resources, we're again anticipating that our revenues will remain similar to fiscal year 22. Our state program income is uncertain and have been budgeted conservatively. For salary, wages, and benefits, you can see we're estimating approximately $40,500 increase, which is 3.9% over fiscal year 22. And that, again, that's the same rate of wage increase. Our part-time staff, again, you see those slightly larger amounts to try and equalize those positions to comparable positions across the metro. Benefits and costs, again, a 10% increase in health and dental benefits over fiscal year 22. You'll see 0 for staff development, repair, maintenance, and utilities. We've increased it by 1,000 for annual inflation. Contractual services, a slight increase of $450. Commodities, we have a decrease here, and this is from decreases in our furniture and fixtures, DVDs, books on disc, computer software, and CDs, and then capital outlay of 0. And that's what we've got for fiscal year 23.
And Jim, can you remind us why we are also considering fiscal year 23 in these presentations?
Last year we started doing a 2-year budget to help us better estimate what our budget's going to do over multiple years as opposed to just looking 1 year at a time. So although we're focusing on the FY22 budget, we do have our staff look at the FY23 so we can figure out and determine if there's any trends or things that we need to be concerned about as we go through the next year's budget and that we just need to be aware of now. So it's really and then we'll take that FY23 budget and sort of begin when next year we'll use a FY23 estimated budget and as part of the information we put together for our budget presentations next year. So it's a way for us to look a little bit deeper, a little bit longer out rather than just focusing on this 1 year, because things do change year to year. And in some cases, we know there's going to be some expenses coming up in 23 that may not be reflected in the 22 budget.
council have any further questions for Katie or for Eric for either year's budget that's been presented? If not, Eric, are we ready to move on?
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, it looks like the next budget presentation is community development.
Hi, this is Dave Warding. If Eric or whoever's sharing the screen could stop, I'll switch over here. Thank you. So I'm just going to share the document that was in the council packet for community development. I would note, just realized this a little bit earlier, the first page is for building and housing, which includes revenue is missing. So it starts at page 201. That page is actually under economic development. So that page is missing from this document, but I will just give a quick summary. Under community development, we have the building and housing department budget, the planning and zoning budget, the economic development budget, which Adam's going to talk about when I'm done here. And then I'll also be talking with this about the city hall budget. We have a separate line or separate budgeted items for maintenance of city hall. And so there's been a lot of work in that area this year as a result of our new building. So I'll start with building and housing, which is what you see on the screen. As far as revenues go, we're right on track this year for what was budgeted this current budget year. You know, we're seeing strong growth, but not strong enough that I'm confident in sort of increasing our projected revenue. So expecting over the two budget years, sort of a flat growth or a flat revenue from building and housing revenue. Those will be all our building permits. The one area that we are not currently collecting revenue in March, we suspended doing our rental housing inspection program because of COVID. That usually brings in between $25,000 and $28,000 a year. We charge those fees when we actually do the inspection. So every 2 years, they're required to register their properties. There's no charge for registering. We charge them when we actually go out and do their inspections. So we haven't been collecting that revenue. So in the projected year end, we are expecting that we'll have that lost revenue in the current budget year, but expecting that those revenues would be back in the two proposed budget years. As far as building and housing goes, that's really it. No changes of any significant. Any of our expenditures are really just flat. A couple minor adjustments between a couple of line items, but no increases. I'll switch over to planning and zoning. Would note we are showing an increase in revenue for our plan plat and construction review. So when we have developers submitting site plans and plats, those go to FOTH for review. We bill, and so we pay FOTH for those, and then we bill those invoices back to the applicants. And so those have just been running higher over the last couple of years. We've historically sort of budgeted about 50,000. They're running closer to 70,000. So we've shown an increase in revenue there. Down in the under expenses, I'm showing the exact same increase in expenses. So that's a pass through. The only other item of significance in the planning and zoning budget under consultant, we just completed the comprehensive plan. Last year's budget cycle, we approved the first year funding of an update to our zoning code and a decision package. That was a 2-year request. And so that funding is shown in our current budget and is also shown in the proposed 21-22 budget year as well. And so that is included here in the budget. We haven't started that process yet just because the comp plan took a little bit longer to complete because of COVID. We're expecting to get that going just after the first of the year. Otherwise, planning and zoning wise, no real changes in expenditures. Again, a couple of minor adjustments between categories, but no increases. Any questions on the overall budget, building and housing, or planning and zoning? We do have 2 decision packages under community development. They're both related to GIS and mapping, or GIS and mapping. A couple of years ago, the council approved a decision package that allowed us to upgrade our ESRI, our Geographic Information System software. ArcMap or ArcView is the software we use and what everyone else uses. And so we have now the ability to do a lot more online mapping. However, we need some help sort of getting that set up. And so we're requesting a decision package for a one-time $20,000 cost that would allow us to have a consultant come in and help us get our online mapping system up and going. This would build us the platform in which we could push out web maps. And I'm sure all of you have spent plenty of time looking at COVID maps on various sources, such as Polk County's zip code data. That's a good example of that. So we have the ability now to do maps just like that. We just need some further setup done that would take some consulting to assist us with that. And we're expecting that cost to be about $20,000. Again, it'd be a one-time cost. And Dave Kroll, our GS coordinator, had a couple of examples included in the packet. But again, with at least most of us spending a lot of time looking at maps related to COVID in this last year, you're probably pretty familiar with the different products that are out there. But the second decision package is for a replacement of our large format plotter and scanner and copier. So we do have a large scanner that can print up to 36-inch wide. It also scans plans and can copy plans. That piece of equipment is about 10 years old and just been a lot of changes in technology, particularly the print quality and the scanning capabilities. So we are requesting replacement. We've been working on this. I actually think the cost is about $12,000 instead of $15,000 that's shown here. And we have been talking with the fire marshal. There's some interest in moving our current scanner to the fire department for his use, which would get used less than it does currently in community development. So again, we think about a $12,000 cost for that request. Any questions on either of those decision packages?
David, I want to jump back real quickly to the inspections of the rental properties.
Yes.
You say we didn't do those this year because of COVID, and that was obviously the appropriate thing to do. Next year, do we intend to just kind of write off this year and proceed as usual, or are we going to try and catch up with some of them that we didn't do this year? What is our plan there?
Well, we haven't fully flushed that out yet because we don't know when we'll restart them.
Right.
Part of our, I'm not sure how much we'll be able to sort of ramp them or catch up. We do inspections in every unit every other year. So essentially we've split the, I think we've got, should know the answer off the top of my head, but somewhere around 4,500 total units that are registered that we have to inspect. So we're doing a couple thousand inspections each year. We only have 3 inspectors. They can't, and we generally fit in the rental inspections during times when we're less busy. So over the winter they tend to do a lot, and spring, when it's a little wetter, when folks aren't doing as much, tend to be our sort of heavy time, kind of from this time of year through April is when we tend to do them. So our hope would be a year from now we're back doing those and our revenues would come in. We're probably just writing off this past year and we're just going to pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
And so instead of being 2 years, there'll be a 3-year gap in inspections.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sorry, it was a long-winded answer.
No. That's kind of what I expected. So.
Yep. All right, I will talk about City Hall now. So this is page 217 of the community development document. Obviously, we have a new building, and along with that comes new expenses to operate the building. And so we've been working to try to figure out what all those sort of costs and working on. In your next council meeting, you'll see a number of maintenance agreements on different pieces of equipment come before you that just need to be, we need to keep on top of the maintenance. So I'm going to start there at the bottom of page 217 under the repair, maintenance, and utility items. That first line, the maintenance buildings and grounds, we're showing 25,000 in this current budget year, and then projecting that to 47 and then 48 the next fiscal year. That basically accounts for our cleaning services, so janitorial services. And with the new building, we've also budgeted for window and carpet cleaning. Window cleaning twice a year, inside and out. We've got an awful lot more windows than we had in our old building. Then an annual carpet cleaning, as well as we have a service that provides and switches out our rugs every couple of weeks at the kind of the entrances to keep the building clean. And then our janitorial services. So we did, prior to moving in, we did bid out our janitorial services. We've went with the low bid, who is capable of emptying garbage and vacuuming, but we're just not happy with the sort of level of service. It was, fine in a 30 or 40-year-old building, but in a new building, it's just not sparkling the way we'd like it to. And so the proposed budget does include an increase that would allow us to sort of increase the level of janitorial service we're able to use to better maintain and better clean our facility. So that's what you're seeing there in projected budget year 1 and projected year budget 2. Moving down that line item, or that list there under repair, maintenance, and utilities, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. This would be to cover a maintenance contract with an HVAC vendor that would take care of routine inspections, filter changes, those types of things for our entire HVAC system. So you're seeing there 12,000 in the projected year-end budget, and then 25,000 next year. I actually have 2 proposals from 2 different HVAC companies, and I'm meeting with one of them tomorrow that is quite a bit cheaper than that. That would be about 12,000 or under for both years. I've just been concerned that their proposal didn't look quite like the other proposal, and I want to make sure they're covering everything that we want covered. So my hope is by the time we move this forward, as we move through the budget process, that those numbers will be able to come down. I think we've got an alternative that will allow us to do that just a little bit cheaper than what we projected here. The next line item is for security and access control. This would be annual maintenance costs for our security access cards to get in and out of the building and in through the building, our electronic card system, as well as our security camera system throughout the City Hall building. Next item there is a new line item. It's generator maintenance and repair. Again, on Monday's council meeting, you'll have a agreement before you that would be annual maintenance on the generator with Ziegler, who installed the generator. That would include regular inspections, oil changes, those types of things to keep it operating. Also included in this line item would be the diesel fuel that we need to keep that operational. Natural gas and electricity, we're showing that flat each year at about $25,000. I expect that number to go down. It's just been really hard to project. We haven't yet flipped the switch on the solar. We're waiting on inspections for that. So we're leaving that flat at the moment, but I do expect that number to come down as we get some use data on our current facility. And then we just have our stormwater utility fees that come out of there as well. If you look under commodities, we've maintained those relatively the same as what they were previously, but that's where we cover other kind of services such as fire alarm monitoring, pest control, those types of services are kind of covered under a couple of those categories are under commodities. So I covered a lot. There's some big changes there as far as expenditures, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have on sort of the operating costs for the new building.
David, this is Suresh. I have a quick question. Let's see. Can you go back to page 217 where you talked about the maintenance and buildings, things like that?
Yep.
So I see that there's a cost there. So I'm just trying to understand. I know we talked about in the last budget meeting as well. Are we sharing this maintenance with the other city buildings like the public utility, the fire and the police building? Is that also shared as part of this maintenance? Or
It's not shared. So the public safety building has maintenance agreements in place.
Okay.
Similar to what we're proposing here. The agreements are specific to the building and the equipment that we have in the building, or in each particular building. So one of the proposals I have on the HVAC maintenance is the same vendor that we use at the public safety building, and they're very happy with that vendor. So, and then our other vendor is the installer of most of our HVAC system in the current building or in our new building. So. That we're just working through those two proposals, and as I said, I hope to bring those numbers down. But these would be specific to each building.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just trying to get to a different point here. So I understand it's a part of each building. So I'm trying to say if we can reduce the cost by having a single vendor work on all these different buildings with the same vendor, is that there'll be a cost reduction or the same costs?
No, I don't think so. So the costs are based on what equipment we have in each building and what maintenance they require. Okay. And the type of filters they use, and so each cost is building specific based on the systems that are in place in each building.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify. I was just trying to see if we can get some cost benefits up there. But thanks, appreciate that.
Yep. Any other questions on City Hall?
Yeah, will we ever get into it?
I hope so. It's except for the feature walls, they're pretty much done now. So
yeah,
it's looking really
nice.
Have
to be patient.
Yep. Bounce down through here, a couple other items. Included here on page 220 is our project development fund. This is a fund that we've used historically over time, although we haven't used much lately. I'm going to have Adam here talk about this in a second, one of his decision packages. But this is a fund that we've historically put money in over time, and we can sort of use it for special projects that come up. So we are working on in the projected year end, you see expenditures and revenues. We are doing the Highway 141 traffic study. That's a shared project with Iowa DOT, Grimes, and Polk County. And so that our actual cost is about $30,000 for our share. Total cost, as you see under expenses, is $88,000. But the other partners will be paying revenue of about $58,000. So that's what's showing up here. And then I'm going to be quiet for a second and see if Adam wants to jump in and talk about your decision package here on this fund.
Sure, thanks, Dave. I have two decision packages for consideration. The first one that's pulled up here is titled Project Development Fund. So we've run into a number of sort of odds and ends types of projects in the last several years in the economic development in Johnston that fall outside of kind of our typical development agreement and TIF operations. A few examples that I have listed there was wetlands delineation study of the Ignite site, some restrictive covenants that exist on the price chopper that the city could take a more active role in trying to resolve and perhaps get that property put back into productive use. A couple of projects that we've had now in the Northwest annexation area, very large kind of national site selection competitions that typically there's a pretty intensive application process that's put together on a tight timeline, and there may be specific criteria that we're trying to meet and that require archaeological study or wetland studies or soil bearing capacity studies. So particularly as we look at the Beaver Creek Golf Course area and the ability to maybe attract a larger type of a project out there, there's some cooperative efforts that we could be undertaking with property owners to get those properties sort of development ready for these national searches. Former school administration building and trying to get that potentially preserved and remodeled. Commercial development or demolitions that occur outside of TIF districts. And then more recently, the COVID-19 Small Business Relief Fund. So, again, these typically fall outside of the purview of where we have budgeted for TIF projects or outside the scope of an urban renewal plan that we have. But it would be nice to be able to have a source of funds to take on these projects as they come up, have them reviewed by the Economic Development Committee and City Council and approve them in a quick manner to respond to economic development issues as they arise. So I'll pause there, but the funding source of this would potentially be the general fund as opposed to TIF due to their potential location outside of urban renewal areas. I put in there a potential annual cost of $25,000 and the potential for that to potentially carry over from year over year. As these types of projects are sort of sporadic, I think we'd want to maintain a reasonable line item in there to be able to tackle larger projects as they might come up. Pause there if there's any questions.
Adam, anything magical about 25,000? Did you base that on anything other cities have done, or just kind of rough guess? I mean, I think what you've outlined certainly makes a lot of sense, and I think there's certainly a need for it, and maybe a case could be made that it needs to be more than 25,000, and obviously sort of depending on what the demand is, that could help shape it. But just kind of wondering what your basis for the 25,000 was.
Yeah, good question. Again, kind of the thought process on my end was it's perhaps these funds would carry over to establish kind of a rolling fund there. Potentially that would build up over $25,000 as consecutive years occur. I don't know what we'd want to try to maintain there as a long-term balance, whether that's $50,000 or $75,000, in instances where you have a larger project that might come up. But $25,000 seemed like a reasonable starting sum based off of some previous projects that we've run into, such as the COVID-19 Small Business Fund and some other initiatives that we've looked at for engineering and site selection things. So it would be enough to get us started, but it's certainly a possibility that larger projects could occur that wouldn't be sufficient to cover.
Adam, would this be coming to us every year as a decision package? I mean, decision packages are one-time expenses, are they not?
Both this one and the other project that I'll outline here are intended to continue for over 1 year. The other one does have a more limited time frame, but the intention here would be that this fund would be in existence for the foreseeable future and would need to be refunded each year to a certain extent.
It seems like this fund, I think that this is a good idea. I'm wondering if somehow it makes sense to have it come from the proceeds from the 1 cent sales tax. It kind of seems like as we get money in for the sales tax, it should support this effort. So just a thought.
No question on my end, but just one quick comment. I'd previously attended an event where the city of Bondurant, I believe it was talking about luring Amazon to their community as part of Project Blue Jay, and they spoke really highly of the state site certification program. So I was really excited to see this package come up, and I think there's a lot of unique and cool things to advance economic development that could come out of it.
And Adam, would I be correct in saying that before any money would be expended out of this fund, the projects would be brought before the city council, there would be discussion and then approval for expenditure for those projects?
Yeah, my tentative thought was that we would establish some baselines for approval. If there's a smaller expense of, $1,000 or $2,000 to partner with the property owner on something, that might be a staff level decision. But when you get into larger expenditures, presumably it would have a more intense discussion at the Economic Development Committee level and then approval by City Council.
I might suggest that if there's support for the idea, although some decision packages are reoccurring decision packages, and on that form I sent you this morning, Rhonda, there would be an X beside their number that tells you it's going to happen every year. But in this particular case, and based on what Adam's wanting to do with it, and because of GASB requirements, I would probably develop a policy or a resolution or something that you guys set that says this is the balance we're going to maintain in it, and this is how we're going to operate this fund. And then I would, the balance would be marked as a committed fund so that it couldn't be spent on other things. So that's just a suggestion as we move forward.
There's no other comments on the project development fund. The second decision package for consideration relates to the northern annexation area, or the Beaver Creek annexation area. This has been an idea that Phil Dunshee and I have been kicking around for a while. As we get slowly closer to developing the Beaver Creek area here north of town along 141 and Saylorville Road, it is a very geographically distinct area separate from the current city of Johnston. And there is some opportunity here to both try to expand and grow into that future land use area that we have identified, which is going to require some communication and cooperation with those property owners that are outside of the city of Johnston. But there's also going to be a significant amount of resources invested in infrastructure and other projects there, again, requiring a lot of coordination with those property owners and trying to market this area as a distinct brand and develop it in the way that we've outlined in the recently updated comprehensive plan. So we think there's an opportunity here to do some branding on this jointly with those property owners and developers that will occur out there, but also try to nudge the development direction in a way that, that meets the city's needs and what we've identified in the comprehensive plan. So again, this is a project duration that would be multi-year, and the starting date of this, I think, is at least partially determined by when infrastructure does arrive and development begins. That could be late 2021 to some certain extent, but more likely it will be starting in 2022 or 2023. It's kind of hard to predict at the moment given the Xenia lawsuit. But again, we're looking at maybe a duration of 3 to 5 years here initially to kind of launch this branding effort, to name this area, and to spend some of those resources to partner with those property owners in branding that area and promoting it and conducting any studies to facilitate the infrastructure improvements that need to happen out there. Envision some of this work happening jointly with Jedco, using some of their branding efforts. And I think Phil's already looked at or potentially acquired a website domain name that could be used at some point in the future to support this. And then there's, of course, some kind of separate items that are anticipated to be budgeted in here, such as kind of landmark signage that we would want to eventually create in the northwest annexation area, the Beaver Creek area, telling folks that they are coming into Johnston as those city boundaries grow and development occurs. But again, no magical number here, but a potential annual budget of $30,000 to begin some of that design and branding work in anticipation of some of those consulting services that would take place in the future as we work towards those infrastructure improvements. Any questions on this one?
So Adam, would you mentioned that the sort of the program taking multiple years. Do you envision that you would need a $30,000 funding level over 3 to 5 years each year, or hard to predict that, or what's your kind of understanding of that?
Yeah, again, I wish I could give you a definitive answer on that. It really is going to depend on how development takes shape out there, which developers advance their ideas, and whether what cooperation with the city that requires. So there is some sort of fixed expenses perhaps on branding for the area and marketing it, and the website. But as far as consulting studies of joint operations with those property owners, it's hard for me to guess. But again, just kind of based off of some of those studies that we have done. Obviously, the DOT 141 study is significantly bigger expense than what I would be anticipating for most of these. But that's one example of sort of a joint operation to try to encourage development and get the area ready for development that could occur.
So it's sort of a mix of some sort of upfront costs, like a marketing. That's something that you kind of do initially, and you that wouldn't be repeated year after year. But then you could envision some ongoing annual expenses as part of this mix. Is that what I hear you saying? Potentially.
Yeah, I think there are some ongoing annual expenses, and those would be if we do want to establish that brand and market in the business record, or be promoting this area in partnership with some of those property owners and developers at specific events that might be occurring. But then there's more fixed expenses, such as just setting up that website and establishing it, and laying some of that groundwork through those consulting services that would immediately need to get underway as well. Phil's added a comment there that you would anticipate there's private sector support for a number of these activities that would take place as well.
Adam, is this similar to what some other communities are doing?
The best, and I wouldn't say this is a perfect example, but the best example of kind of a similar situation that I can come up with would be the Urban Loop, or as you might know it as Riders Corner, depending on how successful Urbandale's efforts to rebrand that for you have been. But yes, they obviously have undertaken a pretty aggressive social media campaign and paid promotional campaign to brand that as the Urban Loop, as that infrastructure went into place there over I-80 and 35, to establish that TIF district in the adjoining area, and install that infrastructure and work with those property owners. So there are some similarities on that, although the Northwest annexation area here is significantly larger and a little bit more diverse as far as our development intentions than the Urban Loop, which is primarily office and commercial in nature. If there's no other questions on that, I can move on to the Economic Development TIF and Hotel Motel budget worksheet. Sorry, Cindy, are you pulling that up, or did you want me to share my screen?
I assumed you were sharing.
Sure. A second here then.
Sorry. It had been up there, so I just assumed it was you doing it. If you can't get it out of, I can do it too.
Can you see that now?
No.
Nothing?
Nope. Did you want me to do it, Adam?
Try one more time here. How about now?
There you go.
All right, so looking at page 1 here, if you're following along, that's 227 in the Economic Development TIF Hotel Motel attachment. You'll see 2 line items that have expenditures here. These are related to the town center. The first is the expenditure of $100,000, $100,367, 64,020. That's town center entertainment. This was the estimate that was originally discussed during the passage of the town center project and at last year's budget work session. It's just a single line item that consists of the city's monthly payment to the Town Center Association for common area entertainment expenses. So these would be expenses incurred by the Town Center Association, primarily through the venue manager. If you're not on the Economic Development Committee, kind of a quick update on that. They've reviewed several applications to be the venue manager in the town center. City staff is currently working with Venue Works, who's based out of Ames, to finalize an operating contract to bring back to the committee and the city council for consideration. So this is sort of a moving conversation here, but over the last month, Venue Works has indicated that their subsidy is likely going to be substantially less than that $100,000. They're currently targeting $51,735, but we're recommending maintaining that $100,367 for the next 2 fiscal years out of an abundance of caution until we have additional operational experience. To refine this number off, of course, COVID to a certain extent is going to impact these numbers as well based off of how many activities we actually hold as the town center opens and kind of moves towards operations in the summer of 2021. And then just as a reminder of the town center organizational structure, the city and the developer make up the initial town center association board that's in charge of both the operations and the common area maintenance. So this entity is going to be stood up here and operational within the next several months. And that'll probably work through one of the city council committees structurally as far as decision-making initially, as the city's in kind of the driver's seat for that association until additional private businesses are located there. So you see those 2 expenditures both for 21-22 and 22-23. But again, I would anticipate that the actual incurred expenses should be lower than that. But those are what are in there based off of the previous estimates and kind of where we stood as we were putting the budget together and providing sort of a cushion here, not knowing the extent of those operations and their costs in the first 2 years. Questions on the entertainment side?
Adam, are those funded out of what those? I presume those don't come out of the city general funds. Those come from some other source.
That was an open discussion point when we passed the town center development agreement of where these funds might be derived from. There's a couple areas, the general fund, potentially TIF or Parks or Rec, or local option sales tax were discussed. Right now, I think it's just proposed to come out of the general fund, but Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
You're not wrong. That's where it's coming out of at this point.
The second associated expense here then is the $139,320 here in 21-22 and the $182,660 in 22-23. So this is the actual town center operational fund. So this would include what I think right now is a very healthy insurance line item, legal expenses, particularly related to startup for the first couple of years here, electric, water, garbage, public Wi-Fi within the town center, maintenance, decorations, accounting, and then it also includes for the first year here a $12,720 annual rollover capital replacement fund. So most of the line items would be expected to be spent in the fiscal year, but in particular the capital replacement fund one would carry over in anticipation of those larger replacements that would need to be undertaken by the town center association over time. This is a refined number from what you would have seen last year, although no expenses have been incurred yet. But again, the actual cost is anticipated to be lower, but until we have that operational experience, we're trying to maintain a healthy balance and buffer there. And then in particular, looking at the first couple of years, city staff is doing the majority of the snow removal and the mowing in the 21-22 budget. That'll be done through the Parks Department. But this will eventually be turned over to the association for them to manage and to privately contract out. So as we see additional private businesses locate here, the city's charge on both the entertainment cam and the operational cam are based off of our square feet in the city hall is relative to the other businesses. So our proportional share will go down, in particular on the operational side. But for the first few years, we'll be carrying the water on that. And although there will not be any significant maintenance issues, as that it is under warranty the first year or two, we're again trying to be cautious and make sure that there's going to be sufficient funding to continue those operations. Any questions on the town center operations? If not, looking at page 2 here, page 228, the economic development budget, there are no substantial changes to the budget. I would only note that last year there was the broadband visioning study that kind of falls into the contractual services, the economic development budget. We don't currently have anything budgeted for a follow-up action or study on the broadband visioning. We're obviously in the process of working through that and will be for the next several months. But if there are any action items that occur as a follow-up to that, they're not currently budgeted. Briefly touching on our TIF districts. TIF 1 is East Central TIF district, so that covers Merle Hay Road and Beaver Drive. This is the most active TIF district. We fund a lot of different projects out of both for development agreements such as Ignite and a number of smaller businesses along Beaver Drive, but also infrastructure projects such as the Merle Hay Road intersection and the town center infrastructure. There's also a number of property acquisitions that are financed through the district. And the majority of my salary is paid from the district as well, and to a lesser extent, other TIF districts. So these are all projects and costs that have previously come in front of City Council. There's no additional costs that are budgeted in here other than our typical contractual services, such as publications and legal fees that we incur for new development agreements and publications for changes to the urban renewal plans. But you'll see over the next 2 years here, and many of these agreements go out beyond 2 years, the rebate agreements with projects such as Cadence or Bricktown, Cornerstone Commons, and other projects that are within this TIF district that are scheduled and slated for payment. TIF 2 is our Beaver Creek West TIF district. That covers portions of Northwest 86th Street, as well as Birchwood Court. Most of this TIF district expired a couple of years ago, but 2 areas were renewed. In particular, the area that covers Roughwood project, phase 1 is completed and phase 2 is going to be under discussion. And then the Birchwood Hubble project there, just off the interstate, which they've completed their first building and are not ready to begin their second one yet. But those are the 2 active rebate agreements that are within this TIF district, and payments are slated and scheduled for. TIF 3 is the Northwest 62nd Avenue TIF district. That covers primarily the former Pioneer Corteva projects that we've had over the years. Historically, this has been a very active TIF district. Recently, we passed an ordinance that turned off the incremental tax collection on the entirety of this urban renewal area, so there will not be any future revenues coming into this district. Going forward, there are 2 active Pioneer projects that are still receiving rebates that we already have cash reserves for, as well as some additional cash that is in that TIF district that I think Teresa will probably be talking about later to fund other potential projects within that urban renewal area. TIF 4 is Windsor Office Park. That exclusively just covers the north part of Windsor Office. That was historically put in place about 18 years ago to help fund the infrastructure that went in place when the north half of Windsor Office developed. And historically, that's been the only payments in this TIF district. The last one is slated for 21-22 for the $176,000 here. We did recently approve another development project, Impact 7G, that will be paid for out of a forgivable loan in the future when that project is completed. And you'll see another project coming forward, similar in size and scope, with a rebate agreement as well. That would be actually be a forgivable loan. But those are the only active or proposed expenses in TIF 4. TIF 5 is the Northwest 100th Avenue TIF district. This covers mostly West Office Park. We do have a couple of active development agreements here in the last several years, such as DRE and the dental clinic. And a couple other smaller ones, mechanical sales. We've paid for some infrastructure out of this TIF district as well, or have slated some upcoming infrastructure improvements. I should also note it under TIF 3, Northwest 62nd improvements were originally paid for largely out of that TIF district. There's no currently proposed other projects in this TIF district, so we just have the existing rebate projects that are slated here with DRE, mechanical sales, and the dental clinic. And the final TIF district is TIF 6. That's West Central. That covers 70th Avenue. This one was put in place primarily for Beaver Creek 2, the Pioneer project. That rebate cycle is completed, and the revenue being driven from TIF 6 is primarily helping pay for the Northwest 70th Avenue road improvements that have been completed. There are some additional future projects that could occur here north of the high school, but that is the only development project that we've had in this TIF district to date. So I think that covers all 6 of our TIF districts. Happy to answer any questions on those.
Adam, will you continue sharing your screen to run through the hotel motel tax while Jim talks about it?
Sure.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question about one of the TIF districts. It's okay, so it's page 113. It's TIF district number 1, East Central, and it's MHR redevelopment property acquisition. Is that the town center property acquisitions?
Yes, that was a bond issuance 2018E, I think, maybe Teresa. That was funding acquisitions primarily for the town center, although some of those proceeds have gone or will be going to the purchase of the Urbandale property down in the Gateway, as well as the Christensen property acquisition in the Gateway as well.
Yeah, I just think that by classifying it as the Merle Hay Road redevelopment property acquisitions, that's not a very accurate description of what they are, because we're spending a large amount of money in that line item, 250,000. So, and for instance, if you look at 2021, 2020, 2021, we were budgeted to spend 250,000. We spent 1.1 million there, which I presume is for property acquisitions. I just think we need to better explain what that line item is for, because it's kind of confusing to folks, and it's a sizable line item. And I just think from a.
So I guess you don't think just Merle Hay Road redevelopment property acquisition is good enough?
No, I don't, because Merle Hay Road could be, when I think of the Merle Hay Road, I think of the Merle Hay Road and the 62nd intersection. So does that cover that? And especially if Adam is talking about, we're using funds out of that for the Ignite acquisition. I just think we need to be a little bit more specific in how we spell that out, because when the thing that jumped out to me was the current budget was 250,000. We've actually spent 1.2 million. And that's it's completely appropriate that we're spending that amount of money, but it's significantly above what we had budgeted there. And then it sort of says projected year end 250. So that's kind of confusing to me of how you could have a projected year end that's actually
hasn't been updated.
Yeah. So all of those numbers in there, I mean, if you're a citizen and you're looking at this, it's not particularly transparent, right? And I think it would be very confusing, and it's confusing to me, and it would be confusing to a citizen trying to figure out how we're spending that money, and what we're spending it on. So no, I don't think MHR redevelopment property acquisition. I think it needs to be spelled out a little bit more specifically, and obviously we need to update the projected year end to more reflect what we've actually spent so far.
See what we can come up with on that.
Thank you.
Adam, if you can scroll down to the hotel motel tax portion of it. Okay, this relates to our hotel motel tax expenditures, and we have, as the council may be aware, I mean, 2/7 of the hotel motel tax we collect goes to Catch Des Moines or the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and 2/7 of what we collect goes to Bravo Greater Des Moines. And so what I've done for the 21-22 budget, if you looked at the projected year end, and that needs to be adjusted as well, because we're not going to get the amount of revenue that we typically get for hotel motel. But what I did for 22 is I took about 75% of our typical revenue. That's why you see it go from 82,000 to 62,000 in anticipation of, obviously hotels have been hit very hard with COVID. And so I think the numbers in the projected year end should go down even a little bit further. And I'll talk with Teresa about correcting that. But I'm using 75% in the FY22 budget as we get into the recovery from COVID, and hopefully people have more travel and more confidence in staying in hotels and those kinds of things going forward. And then in 2023, I put it back up to 100% of what we anticipated this year. So with that, the percentages, if you take 2/7 of less revenue, you get less funding that goes to Catch Des Moines and Bravo Greater Des Moines. And so that's why that funding has gone down to 62,000. That's basically 75% of what we budgeted in the current year for that. So I did that just in anticipation that the revenue is going to be down. That is a pass-through expense. So if we collect more revenue than we anticipate, they still get 2/7. If we get less revenue than we anticipate, they still get 2/7. So it's really a pass-through revenue. But this is a best projection that I could have right now. Any questions on that? Okay, if you could scroll down a little bit.
Jim, so the remaining 3/7 that doesn't go to those two goes to the general fund, or where does the remaining 3/7 go?
That does, Teresa, that goes to general fund, correct?
It does go to the general fund, and you transfer 81,000 of it to Parks and Trail Fund 318 capital improvements annually.
So that's the full 3/7 goes to Parks and Trails?
Pretty much.
And so obviously if that money will be less this year as well.
Right, we just have, we do have a balance in that fund. So when I did the reconciliation for it, I don't have that open, but I think we were going to be okay if we only have one bad year.
So that's the next page in this doc,
That's what that transfer is.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
This is the other things you pay for out of hotel motel tax money. So I guess, Tom, after I just said that we transfer that, there's still some money and you use it to pay. I'm sorry, Jim, do you want to talk? I shouldn't.
Well, yes. I mean, so we also provide funding for Jedco, the Johnston Chamber, and the Greater Des Moines Partnership. Now, the numbers that I've included here are really just placeholders. At this point in time, the council is accepting the requests from those organizations. We'll take a look at those requests. They'll officially come at the January 4th council meeting. And then by our work session on January 19th, the council will have to, or we'll talk about what level of funding they want to provide. But just to make sure we have some funding available, I went ahead and put in as a placeholder the amounts that we currently give to each of those organizations. And that certainly could go up. It certainly could go down depending on what the council wants to do when we get to making the final budget decisions. But I felt it was better to go ahead and put a placeholder in there based on the current level of funding rather than, try to come up with $43,000 at the end of the budgeting process to figure out how we would provide support for these organizations. We have the 43,000 obviously included in the preliminary budget, and those numbers can go up and down depending on what the priorities are for the city council. And I think,
Jim, so if, given that those requests presumably will be at least the same amount as what they've received in the last year, and we have fewer funds in those accounts, does that mean we would have to either look to reduce the amount of money that goes to park and trail improvements, not advocating for that, but just trying to figure out what the options are, or two, provide some additional funds to help fund those funding requests? I think we'll need to kind of think through how those get the implications of that. So,
yes, no, that's a good point. And certainly, the funding could come from a reduction in the amount that we put towards park and trail, but we'll just have to. You're right. We need to think through that and how we want to accomplish that. But anyway, again, we've got some placeholders here, so at least are recognizing that there probably would be some support for those organizations. We just don't know the amounts yet. And this just, again, is the expenditures that we typically take out of this fund. Employee work clothing, which is the logoed shirts that the employees get that work in our different departments, as well as the park and trail funding. As Teresa mentioned, that's 81,000 that we typically transfer to park and trail improvements. And I think that's it for this section.
Are we ready to move on then to, let's see, Public Works?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Cindy. All right, so in the streets budget, we took a really good look. We held the line on the majority of our budget line items. We had an overall increase in the budget of around $6,000. On page 101, you'll see the largest addition to the budget, and it is a $5,000 increase there in the first line item, and that would be the mosquito spraying. We discussed this item last year at last year's budget meeting and decided to implement it on this upcoming budget. The additional funds were discussed to go towards spraying additional trail areas. A couple of smaller increases came in the form of, on page 104, about 7 line items down, and a $460 increase in our salt storage building. Johnston's portion of the shared salt storage facility with surrounding metro communities at the metro waste site in Grimes. This additional storage was made available due to West Des Moines constructing a new public works facility, which has direct rail access and increased storage capacity to serve their needs. So being part of that agreement, when they pulled out, we share a percentage of that, and our percentage increased. Currently, the city pays $1 for the capacity to store 1 ton of salt at the facility. So it's some pretty cheap insurance for the city. A couple of winters ago, we were down to about 15 to 20% of salt in this facility here at Public Works. And I think we had to go grab a couple of loads of salt from our storage over there. And as we grow north, this may be a place that we're able to access to serve the Northwest Annex area as well. Our second minor increase comes on page 106 under Contractual Services. Under the software and tech line item, it was an increase of $800. This is for a subscription to download stored information remotely from our Public Works speed feedback signs. These signs are used to collect speed data in and around city construction projects. We share this data with the police department if we see something that is out of the normal, and report that to them. Those were really the 3 additions to our Public Works or Streets Department line items. Take any questions on that before moving into decision packages. Hearing none, we'll look at the first decision package, which is a backup generator and enclosure. This decision package would be used on a generator that the city already owns from a decommissioned lift station that is sitting in storage in one of our water towers, and we would take it and place it in service. It would be used to power our Public Works Building number 2, which houses our street operations and the fuel island, which is used by other city departments, including Parks, Community Development, Police, and Fire. This would allow fuel operations and essential shop functions to continue without disruption during power outage, natural or man-made. And we had, as the folks that work in City Hall know, we had a couple of man-made power outages. The price for this is $11,900. It includes wiring the generator into the building and construction of a small shelter as it would sit adjacent outside of the building that it would be powering, and to perform some general maintenance on the generator just from coming out of storage to get it up and running, and to upgrade and a fuel tank for the generator. Any questions before I move on? All right, on page 111, really looking at fitting our third and final building. Public Works would like to continue to update the original building here on site that was purchased in 1983. This would be the final retrofit of our 3 oldest structures. Building 3 is actually a cold storage facility and houses specialty equipment along with our traffic control devices. The retrofit would extend the life of the structure and increase security. The cost for this package is approximately $125,000, which includes replacing the sliding doors with overhead doors, replacement of exterior metal and gutters. It adds installation to the interior for keeping a warmer environment for that equipment, and upgrade the interior lighting and electrical. You can see in the attached documents on page 112, that's the current structure. If you slide down to the next page, you'll see the last structure that was updated that sits right adjacent to it. We were asked early on, what if we just replace the building? Replacing that building is roughly going to cost anywhere from $750,000 to almost $900,000. So we can upgrade the exterior and fix up some of the interior issues. We can prolong the life of that building. The third decision package on page 117 is converting traffic signal heads. This decision package comes to you to upgrade traffic signal heads from their current 3-light signal head configuration to a 4-light signal head configuration with the flashing yellow. The cost to upgrade an intersection is roughly about $17,000. This would be an annual program anticipated to run 10 to 15 years until completed. The city has 23 intersections with traffic signals, and 3 of those intersections will have been converted as part of improvement projects such as Merle Hay and 62nd Avenue intersection once it's completed. Additional intersections would also be improved through upcoming projects, mainly out there on 104th and Windsor Parkway. And there would be, I'm trying to think, there's another one in an upcoming project, but for the sake of time, the program would be for intersections not shown in the CIP, such as 62nd and 86th Street, or Northwest 86th and 70th Avenue. The installation of traffic signals would allow vehicles to move through the intersection safely versus waiting for a full cycle at the signal. This would also improve the overall traffic flow throughout the city, which was one of our goals in strategic planning. That really sums up the streets budget discussion or decision packages. Any questions?
So Matt, maybe you said this and it slipped by me, but how many intersections do we have currently that have the flashing yellow?
We will have 3 once 62nd and I'm sorry, we'll have Yes, 162nd and Merle Hay is complete. We currently just upgraded the one at Pioneer Parkway and Merle Hay. 100th Street and 62nd has yellow flashing lights at that intersection.
Okay.
Okay. Moving into the water budget. Staff got together and really took a look at the budget and was really able to hold the line on our water budget and sewer budget, with the exception of one line item. The increase to this line item was anticipated as it relates to new software for the water meter reading system, and it's used by the Encode billing system as well. And the second piece was the new asset management software, which we're about to go live with after the first of the year. If we go to page 123, you'll see under software and tech services, there's an increase of about $24,000. And I'm going to tie this into our wastewater conversation too, because page 133 really mirrors this. So we've got the update to a Clara software program, which is the annual fee of roughly around $17,000 in the software and tech services. This enables staff to read water meters and bill out properties' water usage. Our new program also is charged on a per meter rate. And one of its new features among many will allow staff to detect leaks quicker and relay this to residents. Currently, we take meter readings twice a day. And with the new program, we'll actually be able to see it kind of in real time. So if we're looking through there and we see somebody's water usage go up, we'd be able to relay that to them, let them know that they have an issue. That also helps us capture unmetered water leaks. Another addition to this line item is the asset management software annual fee of approximately $12,000. Which will enable staff to move from a paperwork order system and repair system to an electronic system. The program will track asset conditions and provide a history on those assets, which will help future budgeting or repair or replacement of those assets. And there will be additional costs of roughly about, in the first couple of years, for about $5,000 for electronic field equipment to support staff's utilization of the asset management program, such as a laptop or tablets, for the mobile application in asset management. I mean, really on page 131, under that same line item, software and tech, it's both of those are really split between water and wastewater because they support both systems or both functions. And I believe we found a typo on page 123. We'll get that corrected underneath contractual services, financial. I think we just typed in an extra number there at the front of that. Should say 7,700 and it says 27.5. It should read, yep, right there. Thank you. Any questions on water or wastewater's line items? Moving into decision packages. Just wanted to state that our water wastewater decision packages would be funded through our water sewer rates and not impact our general fund. Really the first two items, page 137 and 139, we'll combine this for conversation and sake of time as well. These decision packages are for a backup pump for the Canterbury Woods lift station, which would be valued at about $20,000. This moves our sanitary sewer waste out of the subdivision and into gravity sewer up at 106th and 70th, as well as our Orchard Meadows lift station number 1, which is along Beaver Drive, and it moves all of the sanitary sewer waste north of 84th Street on Beaver Drive, and it's valued at roughly $25,000. We currently have 6 lift stations. 4 of those have a spare pump. The backup pump, it allows staff to perform scheduled maintenance of the lift station while keeping it in service. And another benefit of having the backup pump is assist staff in reducing downtime in the event of a catastrophic pump failure at those stations. Moving on to page 141. This is a new decision package. In past years, Public Works has submitted a decision package for a jetter vac unit. At last year's budget discussion, we were directed to look into a contracted service to provide the cleaning of approximately 81 miles of sanitary sewer that Johnston has. The cost of the contract is roughly $90,000 annually. That would take approximately 4 years to get through the city. If we needed to, we could probably break that down into smaller chunks, but it is recommended that we try and get through the city about approximately at least every 5 to 7 years. This would clean the entire collection system. The city currently doesn't have any cleaning equipment to that size to proactively clean the city's collection. This would be with like a Smith Sewer Service or a Hydro Clean, a company such as that. Moving on to page 143, looking at a wide format printer, scanner, copier. This would be a joint decision package between water and wastewater. The current printer in the building is a 2001 model. It currently does not allow staff to print 11x17 documents, which are commonly used in today's construction prints or printing out utility locates. It also doesn't print in color, which is not a huge issue, but it is nice to have a color picture when you're trying to identify an area. This office equipment is valued at $7,500 and would be split $3,750 between water and wastewater. And I apologize for not mentioning it in the first two decision packages, but those would be funded through just the wastewater budget. That wraps it up for Public Works. Tried to keep it brief. Any questions? I got to put everybody to sleep.
Did you go over page 119? The maintenance worker?
No, we did not. So really, the maintenance worker, last year, we had put that into budget last year. Public Works, we initially requested the additional staff member for a maintenance worker 1 position. We were approved for one last year as well, but due to COVID, we delayed hiring that position for 6 months. So we really took a look at that, and we'll move that into that's really into the second year budget, but we'll bring that back next year.
Is that everything, Matt?
That covers everything.
Okay. Let's move on to the police department budget then. Chief?
Okay. 1 minute here. So looking at your screen, this is just the attachment that was included within the council agenda. So I'm going to work through the same thing to give you kind of an overall, what you'll notice in a lot of the permanent notes sections. As I work through the budget process, I tried to outline as much as possible kind of the annual recurring costs and the budgeted items and those sorts of things. So you've got quite a bit of detail as you flip through those first half dozen or more pages of some of the specifics that are allocated to each of the line items. In general terms, looking at the revenues, police department on average, we're right around $250,000 of annual revenue. Given the situation with COVID and the court systems, there's been some adjustments this year to knock some of those numbers down a little bit. I would anticipate, hopefully, we're going to have courts in session here by spring. It's kind of a moving target at this point, but Based upon some of that, our revenues are projected to be down. They ended last year down a little bit on some of our fines and fees. Also will be down likely this year. And then hopefully in fiscal 22, we'll be able to move back up on those. About half of our revenue stream is generated through reimbursements with the school district for our SRO program. That's a 60-40 sharing program for expenses. We are in the final year of that 2080 agreement with the school district, where I've had preliminary conversations with Superintendent Kaser. Her and I are both in agreement that we believe it's a successful program, and that we recommend to the council and to the board that continues. I believe there's going to be a joint meeting with the school board coming up here in a few months, and I've requested that be one of the items for discussion. So hopefully we'll continue that with the new agreement under similar terms. So the items associated with the costs with that, or the revenues with that, have carried over. Additional funds that we typically receive through revenues, we get a small portion of reimbursement, about 50% of our bulletproof vests that we purchase for officers. Those are mandated to be replaced every 5 years by Department of Justice standards. So we've got recurring funds that we apply for with that. We also have some recurring traffic safety funds that there's an annual allotment given for traffic enforcement projects and equipment such as radar replacements, speed trailers, those sorts of things. So we pursue those on an annual basis and have made some projections based upon past years on what we would typically receive as an award for that. Moving down to, I guess, any questions on the revenues before I jump into expenditures? Moving on to page 3 then. Police Department currently we're funded at 31 full-time officers, 4 civilian staff members. If you recall, at the approval process of this current budget year we're in, the funding was for 31, the authorization was for 32, but we didn't have that additional allocation of funds for that 32nd officer. We have not hired that 32nd officer. I intentionally held off on that just based upon trying to see where the funds may be as we move through. At this point, I wouldn't anticipate a hiring of a 32nd officer unless we have an absolute as far as additional staffing being added in the next budget year. So right now we're holding with 31 sworn, 4 civilian. We have no part-time staff members. For the overtime allocations, what we budget for is 6 hours of overtime per pay period for 28 full-time positions. That covers in-service training, court time, all of the associated extra duty work. On top of that, in the line item also is included is holiday pay. It costs the police department between $40,000 and $45,000 annually in overtime expense to have mandatory minimum staffing on patrol on our 8 holidays. So that's another figure in there. Additionally, we budget about 100 hours a year for community outreach events, trail patrols, special events, things of that nature for community engagement. That's also included within the line item. Moving down about midway to that page, as far as our training line item and staff development. This is one area where I think we're going to have to explore a potential increase long-term. It's a little early to tell right now. You may or may not be aware there was legislative action taken at the end of the last session that mandated some additional training for law enforcement. It was in House File 2647. It mandates additional focus on implicit bias, de-escalation training, diversity, inclusion, cultural diversity. We'll be pushing forward an annual in-service training to meet those requirements. And we'll be watching the next legislative session closely to see if there's additional requirements for training that are included within that. There's a lot of discussion right now on a focus on law enforcement in the upcoming legislative session. So we'll be watching that closely, but the other piece of it is the associated travel with that. I anticipate each year that we may have to hire a non-certified person. Academy costs have gone up. We're looking at more than $12,000 for tuition, and then an additional about $6,000 on top of that for room and board for academy training costs. So we've done an excellent job of recruiting certified staff members through our lateral transfer program. But as you can imagine, the recruitment efforts in law enforcement as we move forward is going to be much more challenging. Interesting tidbit, the city of Ames who is typically pretty comparable with us in their recruitments. They usually pull in about 100 applicants for their recruitments. They just tested this last weekend. They had 12 people show up and only 7 of them passed the physical assessment and the written assessment. So I'm hoping that when we get into our recruitment, we'll be much more successful than that, but that was a bit of a concern for me. Moving down to the next section, in maintenance of equipment, we're in 2022, fiscal 22, we'll be replacing a server within the police department, and then in fiscal 23, we'll be updating public safety building cameras. So this is one of those expenses that initially it was involved with the capital equipment program and building through the new public safety building. We're now in a position where we're going to be reallocating some of these pieces of equipment so it's absorbed through the operating budget. So that's some of the allocations associated with that equipment line. Top of page 4, consulting. We'll be in a position the fall of this next year, so the fall of 2021, that we'll need to create additional promotional lists. We promote all of our supervision off of an assessment process that'll be for both sergeant and lieutenant. We've got a consultant that we've used in the past that we've had good success with. That's the $5,000 allocation, that top line. I do have a lieutenant that's considering stepping away from the profession about a year from now. So that will require us to test or create a list at least for both sergeant and lieutenant. Couple lines down, our legal fees, that's been up from 40 to 45,000. This is another one of those areas where I'm not sure what the right number is. We're going through a transitional element where we're consulting with attorneys much more with some of our efforts in law enforcement. I don't know if those numbers will hold true. I've made a conservative increase at this point. We may end up having to go beyond that based upon some of the challenges that we face as we move forward as a growing community and the current climate associated with questioning some of law enforcement's activities. As far as the Homeland Security Agreement, this is our cooperative agreement with the city of Des Moines through the MAC. That is a formula for funding based upon population, so I'd anticipate an increase there. Once we get the 2020 census numbers, we'll likely see a small increase there. With the Polk County Sheriff's Office, again, that's a cooperative agreement. That's the contract we currently utilize for the Northwestern annexation to cover those territories for us. We've got some preliminary numbers there. Right now we're paying about just over 21,000. Should bump by only a couple thousand next year, I believe. I think we'll be a little bit under that 25,000, but we're still working through those discussions, and that's an action item that'll come back to the council once we reach those final agreements as far as what's proposed for a 2-year contract extension there. Moving down to the minor equipment line item. In this fiscal 22, we're in a position where we're going to have to replace 8 shotguns within the police department. Majority of them are about 10 years old. We're starting to have some cracked metal with some of them. We've had a couple that we've had to take out of service. So they're aging out and reaching the end of their useful life. It's obviously very concerning to our officers when they train with them and have significant malfunctions, that it's just an end of service life replacement for those. We've also, in the summer when we dealt with some of the civil unrest and crowd control measures and crowd management, it exposed some potential vulnerabilities for us as far as our resource allocations for equipment. We don't currently within the police department have any non-traditional less lethal options if we have to address a large crowd. So most of our less lethal options are based upon one-on-one small groups, but when you have a large subset of a population that may try to rush a building or a line of officers, there's some tools and equipment that we need to explore and have been exploring to try to push forward. So there's about $2,000 in that line to look at a pepper ball system, which is a crowd management system. When you look nationally across some of the after action reports that have been done in larger uprisings across the country, this tool is getting its highest marks as far as the best version of being able to manage a crowd without creating permanent injuries or risk to organizations. So we're currently evaluating that, but we would anticipate the acquisition of a couple of those units as well. Then moving down a few lines to our operating supplies, our ammunition vendor, they closed shop. So ammunition is a great challenge for us right now. Costs are going up. Vendors are reducing because they can't get access to it. And we're also looking at really just an added need for additional ammunition. We were in a position where we faced challenges with acquiring ammunition due to military actions and things like that. So you start a process of building some of those supplies up. We're now in a position where thankfully we did build that up because we can't really get the ammunition. So we're depleting some of our reserves, and in that process, we're going to have to reallocate some additional funds to be able to build those reserves back up as we can get it. We're in some cases 9 to 12 months away from receiving ammunition that's been ordered. So it's becoming quite a challenge for us. Moving down to that last section of capital outlay, I'm going to jump ahead a couple pages here to some notes. These are all the line item notes that I was referencing to help you work through some of the specifics. So this is the section for capital equipment as far as how we are working through trying to restore some of those more expensive regular recurring equipment items. As we continue to grow the public safety building and furnitures and fixtures, there's a need for a couple additional workstations and support services. So that's been added to the furniture and fixtures line. Our office equipment that's focused primarily on recurring need for computers. And then also I mentioned earlier the server in fiscal 22, and then the public safety camera system in fiscal 23. As far as our other major equipment, within the CEP, we're going to be standing up a new crime scene investigation vehicle. There's going to be some supplemental equipment needed with that, but we're not certain of all of the needs of that just because the technologies are changing so much. So there's a general allocation of $7,500 in with that. That may be something that we're able to utilize over the course of several budget years, or it may be something up front that we're still working through those aspects. And then the biggest challenge with that line is our body-worn camera program. We have an exceptional body-worn camera program. We've had great success with it. We were the first in the Des Moines metropolitan area to introduce those technologies. We've been attempting to renegotiate a contract with our current provider for about 2 years now, and we haven't reached agreement yet. So there's a placeholder there for monies associated with that. I think we'll take another bite at the apple here this next summer and hopefully have something squared away to continue the current vendor, or we found another competitive vendor that should also provide us a good end product and service. Last section down there is regarding our bulletproof vest replacements. Again, this is something that we're mandated by Department of Justice to replace, and then we get a 50% reimbursement back through their program. Any questions on the police department operations budget before I start talking about some of the subsets of the budget? Okay, the 167 account is our police trust account. This is sometimes known as the forfeiture account. What this is from time to time we have an opportunity or an obligation to seize monies associated with police work. It may be for safekeeping. It may be in lieu of some sort of criminal prosecution. It may be found property, all those different elements of policing. When we come into contact with cash, we have to do something safe with that, and we have to account for those monies. So in some cases, we go through a forfeiture process to receive a portion of those funds. There's 75% of a court order judgment would come back to the police department. So that's what builds up this money over time. What we've been using these funds for historically since I've been here is a policy project with Jedco Law Group for consulting services to try to really reestablish an up-to-date policy and procedures manual. we continue to work through that process. We've made about, I think it's just over $30,000 of investment with our consultant to this point to get our policies and procedures in place. And that's really the bulk of where these monies go. I don't budget much of that or any of that ahead of time because we're not certain what those fees are going to be. And then the monies that you see coming out of there, those again, it's going to be the court awarded judgments that we have to offer a certain percentage to the county attorney's office, to the attorney general's office, and things of that nature. The 168 fund is really one that can be ignored. We had about $350 left in that grant from Office of Drug Control Policy. We just made an expenditure to spend down the rest of those funds this week. So that 168 fund will be zeroed out. What we've utilized the monies for is to stand up our Narcan or naloxone program to be able to assist citizens that are in need when they suffer heroin overdose or fentanyl or something of that nature. It's been a grant program that we've worked with Iowa Department of Public Health and then supported also by this Office of Drug Control Policy grant. Animal control. Each year I say, in addition to your police chief, I'm also your head dog catcher. So our animal control program is one that really has been pretty stable over the years. A couple years ago, we added a patrol community service officer or CSO that does a lot of the coordination aspect of this. Our revenues are fairly consistent, usually around $4,000. Our expenditures are also pretty close to $4,000. But we do quite a few animal calls over the course of a year. We run about 500 animal calls. That's a wide variety of calls. We see a lot of dog bites throughout the course of the summer months. We impound about 70 animals a year that are taken to the ARL. We have a cooperative agreement with them that we'll be looking at renewing as well. We were just sent information from the Polk County Sheriff's Office that they've given us notice that they're canceling their agreement with us for animal control and trying to put a new model in place. Historically, what we've done, it's been kind of an a la carte service. If you needed their animal control officers, then you would call them to the scene and you would be charged a fee for that, $100 to $150, typically based upon the need. Over the last 3 years, we've used them 5 times. So we handle the vast majority of our animal control in-house. With their new business model that they're pushing forward for animal control, they're asking us to sign an agreement with them that we will have to pay about $10,000 annually to be able to utilize their services as we've had the opportunity to in the past. We're still working through some of the details of what we would get with that as far as the return on investment. I'm not certain that we're going to come forward with a recommendation for that, but again, it's something to be aware of that'll probably bring future discussion to the council if we would decide to bring that forward. Near as I can tell, what it would mean is we'd be paying that annual fee to them. On top of that, we'd have additional costs of about $125 per animal for the ARL to accept them. So we're looking at upwards of probably a $20,000 investment to get into that agreement. And I think we're probably not going to see the return that we would desire from that investment based upon what we know to date. Okay, moving into decision packages. What I'm going to ask is if we can put a pin in some of the staffing requests. I've talked with Jim about this and had some good conversation with the Finance HR Committee a few months back. 2020 has been a pretty challenging year for law enforcement, and there's been a lot of opportunity for us to really reflect inward on what should our business model look like to serve our community in the best ways possible. And I think we're doing the right thing and coming up with some good ideas, but I'd really enjoy a greater opportunity to have a more lengthy discussion with the council to try to hear your feedback. In essence, what I'm asking for in this next budget year is 3 full-time positions. And what I've asked for is at the next city council meeting at the work session that we spend some time to talk through some of your own observations and thoughts as far as the future of policing, and how we can work to ensure that we're providing confidence while we add staff that are needed to be able to respond to the challenges that we face now and into the future. So the 1A, 1B, and 1C are 3 different full-time positions that I'm going to scroll through right now. 1A is creating an Office of Professional Standards to try to help deal with some of the challenges that we have in managing the administrative tasks within the organization. 1B is a continuation from a request from last year's budget for a community affairs officer. But one thing I want to talk with the council about is perhaps we should look at changing this from a sworn position to a civilian position. I think there's some opportunities there based upon what we've been looking at and reflecting on as far as policing goes, and how we might be able to serve the community in a way that reallocates some funds to a civilian position as opposed to a sworn position. There's a couple-page document here that talks about some of the challenges that we face currently, and working through some of the opportunities that we may have to look at reimagining that position. The 1C is specific to continuing to add to our patrol staffing to try to build our personnel resources in a way that helps us respond to the growth of our community as we see it now, and then also the future of the Northwest annexation build out. And there's some information in here that I provide every year as far as national trends, state trends, local numbers as far as staffing ratios and comparisons and that sort of thing. And also there's some breakdowns of service responsibilities and some of the short-term projections that we have for movement within the organization. We've got a couple key retirements coming up in the next couple of years that again provide us another opportunity to really look at reimagining how we can set up our systems for the future to be successful. On page 30 here, this begins a memo that David Wilberding does for me each year. As far as growth projections, it's several pages long. He does a fantastic job of helping me figure out the future of staffing to be able to respond to the needs of the community. I'd encourage you to take some time and review that. It has a lot of great information that goes far beyond just what the police department is impacted by with the growth of the community. It also gives some maps as to high density housing complex and expansion of multi-housing units. We associate that to our crime-free multi-housing programs, but again, there's a lot of added benefit in the detail provided. Moving beyond the personnel piece as far as decision packages go, there's much like Public Works, the police department is really in the same position where we've been managing a lot of our assets through spreadsheets and one person that's responsible for something and trying to track through paper forms. And we're just in a position where it's not successful. We've gotten large enough as an organization that you can no longer allocate one person to track some of this stuff. So this provides a much more efficient solution with the use of technology to be able to put in requests for anything from maintenance to being able to really look at the costs of maintaining things and tracking all of our resources. So we looked at 2 different options with this vendor. We also looked at the Public Works vendor too, just to see if there was an opportunity there to maybe buy in a license for what they're doing. And their software solution is really kind of geared specifically for Public Works, and it didn't meet some of the needs that we have in the police department. What we've elected to do is have an upfront cost of just under $11,000. That includes a license fee, and then there would be an annual recurring fee of about $1,500. The other option was a web-hosted option where we were looking at about $5,100 a year. So this provides us an upfront one-time cost and then a smaller recurring cost annually to be able to manage the system that we need. The next decision package is in regards to animal control. If you recall, last year during our budget discussions, we were just dipping our toe into this. We have a feral cat challenge here within the community. We've identified about 12 different hotspots throughout the community where we have feral cats. So in working to try to establish a program for that. We've looked at the ARL's information, and there's a packet attached with this decision package that really goes pretty far in depth as to the TNR program. But essentially what it is working with a couple local vets to be able to have a program where we can capture these cats, and then they will be neutered and released back into the community. And it's at a fraction of a cost of what we're otherwise paying to remove these animals to the Animal Rescue League. So with the TNR program, you're looking at between $50 and $80 per cat, whereas if we pick that animal up and take it to the ARL, it's $125 per animal. Some of the challenges that we've faced to this point is you have, in essence, a community cat. You have some folks that will work hard to try to maintain that animal. You have others that figure them to be a nuisance. So we would have to go through a process of redefining within our ordinances a definition of what a community cat is versus an at-large pet. The city of Des Moines has been reasonably successful with their program. That's where we've modeled our information through, and with the help of the ARL. So we think this is going to be a recurring cost, but until you really get into addressing the issue, I'm not sure at what level the potential cost is there. We would anticipate probably about 50 procedures in our first year. Hopefully that does a good job of knocking the challenges down, but it's a little premature to say that it would be a one-year expense. There's a map of some of the hotspots, and in copying this map, the legend didn't copy through on that. So I can get you that information as to specifically where those are. There's some minor equipment for cages. Public Works has some cages, but we would need to acquire some additional ones. And then moving into fiscal 23 decision packages, we were approached about a year ago from a local business leader that there was a contingent of persons interested in supporting the start of a canine program. We're just going through the process of starting to study that. I've stood up a canine program for a police department in a prior appointment, and there's a significant upfront investment to it. But once you get beyond that upfront investment, the costs become very manageable. Having a dual purpose canine is a tremendous asset in both community building and in being a force amplifier for the resources we have available to us. So we're just starting the process of really assessing that. We would look at attempting to build an association that would fundraise the first $100,000+ to make that coverage of that initial upfront investment to start up a program, and then working to see what sustainability we had. So again, that'll be something for future discussion with the council if we can build towards that as we study and develop the needs that we have. And the last one is another staffing piece for fiscal 23. This is the creation of a shared position between the police department and fire department. I mentioned earlier, one of our staff members is going to be retiring in a couple of years. So in speaking with Chief Clark and looking at where we're at with technology for both fire, EMS, and the police department, what we're looking at is proposing a creation of a civilian position that would call a public safety support specialist that really is focused on managing the technology and facility needs and working with both administrations of police and fire to manage our needs in many aspects. So this is something that currently we have a sworn officer in that position. And what we would propose is I'm going to need another detective in our investigations unit. So reallocating that sworn position as a detective and then creating this new shared position between police and fire to support the operational needs of both administrations. With that, I will answer any questions anyone has.
Chief, I have just one comment to make about the proposal on the trapping and returning feral cats. I think there could be some pushback on that because of the amount of songbirds cats catch and kill. And so that's another consideration to make, what we're doing to the songbird population. I love cats, absolutely adore them. But there's
Well,
also that.
perhaps I can pick your brain offline on some of those. This is another one of those interesting issues where you have people strongly for or against based upon their personal passions or beliefs. So I wasn't aware of that, and maybe you can help me understand that.
Other comments or questions?
I just would pass along, Chief, greatly appreciate all the data and kind of the way you lay out, helping understand how each of these three officers fit within kind of the overall flow of the department. It makes kind of this decision-making much easier to kind of grasp. So just wanted to let you know, from my perspective, really appreciate all the information you've compiled as part of this process. So.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on to Chief Clark?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, get away.
All right. See if I can share my screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we are.
All right. Well, this should correspond with page 75 in your packet. And so as far as our operating budget, there are a few requested increases. Maintenance of buildings and grounds, an increase of just under $5,000. We have an increased service agreement for maintenance of the public safety building. And so this accounts for that split between both the fire and the ambulance budgets. Maintenance of equipment. We, along with police department, as Chief McDaniel said, we need to install a new server, computer server, and so it falls under the maintenance of equipment. A couple $1,000 increase in maintenance of vehicles. Seems like each year we end up having more and more expensive repairs. And so to keep up with those repairs, increase of $2,000. Software and technical services. So again, to install the new server, we need to pay for the software and pay for the installation of that. And then all these will basically be repeated again in the ambulance side and the ambulance lines. One thing that Teresa had sent an email earlier, and we need to look at our workers' compensation line because I think I've grossly overestimated the costs for that. So we were able to negotiate with our work comp carrier to treat our budget basically based on the percentage of fire versus medical calls and separate out those two. Before, they just charged everything as at the fire rate. The fire rate's about $45 per $100 of payroll for work comp insurance, whereas the ambulance rate is about $5.49 per $100. So it's about 10% the cost for the ambulance. And so since about 77 to 78% of our calls are medical, we were switching the payroll funds. And so if you look up here, the regular salaries on the fire side of, just just over $400,000. But then as we move to the ambulance side, we're estimating that, 1.45, because that's 78% of our budget instead of 50-50 like we used to do. So I believe that we've got an extra couple $100,000, Teresa, that I've overestimated work comp insurance. So that should help with the overall budget projections. So as I was going through the presentation today, I found that error. So I'll get that corrected, and Teresa will be able to update all of you with that additional information.
That's an error moving in the right direction, Chief.
Yes, I'm always happy when I make a mistake that comes out in a good way. So moving into our decision packages, the first decision package is for 3 additional lieutenants. And so this would not be additional personnel, but basically promoting 3 firefighters up to the lieutenant rank. We have currently 1 captain and 1 lieutenant on each of our 3 shifts. And this would complete the complement by putting 1 officer in each of the 3 stations. And so this would be a cost that would be shared with Grimes. The decision package is really a worst case scenario. We are going through the promotional process right now. We did 3 of the 8 candidates today with an assessment center. We'll finish up the other 5 tomorrow. We'll do chiefs interviews next week. And so by the meeting in January, and as soon as Teresa has her costs from the state and from the county and all the budget figures, we will know exactly which payroll these 3 will be on, and we'll know whether it's 2 and 1 on the Johnston payroll or 3 and 0, however it works out for the top 3 candidates. And this request would be to start the promotion and make them effective in July of next year. So somewhere around $5,000–6,000 for wages if they're at the top of their step system, a 9-step system. If there's somebody that's a little towards the middle of their steps, it costs a little bit more. So we've estimated an average, and then because we're already paying them an acting wage, we can reduce the total cost and still brings it in somewhere between, say, $20,000 and $30,000 for the whole package. But again, until we know which 3 come to the top of the list, we don't know what that's going to exactly cost. But again, this would be shared with Grimes depending on which payroll they end up off of. The second package request is for additional ballistic plates and additional ballistic vests. The vests that we were authorized to purchase 4 years ago by council are what's called a level 3A, which is good for protection against handguns. But since most of the active shooter incidents involve rifles, we would like to upgrade those vests by putting steel or ceramic plates in them. And so we have requested 44 additional level 3+ armor, and then 7 new additional level 3A plate carrier vests with the EMS pouch to match what we currently have. We do not have vests on all of our rigs. We try to strategically place them based on what we were able to secure 4 years ago. And so we're just asking to buy 7 additional ones on top of the steel plates. So that total package comes out to about $13,843. And then decision package number 3 is for a digital dashboard software and hardware to allow us to project in the Bay Area of each of the 3 stations, and also to project in the station through one of the televisions all of our daily, weekly, monthly statistics. Also, you can display a count up timer so that when the alarm goes off, they can see how many seconds it takes them to get on the rig and get out the door. It would also flash up the incident address, a routing map. So basically the software takes whatever information we want, projects it into a Chrome box, and that's hooked to those display monitors. And so the cost is for the initial cost of the software, and then the Chrome boxes that we would need 6 of, plus one computer that would be the main computer that the software would reside on, and track all the information and send it out to the other displays. And those are the 3 decision packages. As far as operational costs, as Chief McDaniel said, we're looking at sharing the cost of the current officer that is doing a lot of the technical work for us and a lot of the computer and building maintenance issues. So that public safety support position, we fully support and look to share that cost. And so because the decision package was presented by Chief McDaniel, I just wanted to mention that we support that. And then our operating costs for FY22, we did take on 25% of that current officer into our budget to help defray some of those costs, because he does do an awful lot of work for the fire department and on the EMS side and the fire side with our computers and building maintenance issues and all of that. So any questions?
Any questions from council? Comments? If not, I think we're ready to move on to parks. John?
Yeah, I am ready. Jim, if you want to jump off your screen share, I will see if I can get mine to go up. There we go. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, I know we're 2.5 hours into this, so I won't go into too terribly much detail with everything. I'll just key in on a couple of the spots where we are having some changes to the budget. The first area is down here at Emerald Ash Borer contract. I guess the first thing is this is also actually a decision package. I'd put this budget together prior to thinking about needing to put this as a decision package to increase it. So this typically should just show 105,000 here, not 140. 140 is actually our first decision package. So just kind of take that in note. But with this, I also did want to point out, as you look across this line item, that in 23, fiscal year 23, it drops way down. This is the 21-22 year would be the last full year of the EAB plan that we started almost 7 years ago. So to a degree, a good note. Looking through the rest of the items, basically I do my budget based on historical averages and see if there's any kinds of trends. So as you look across here, you're going to see some numbers that go up and down, but I try to keep those normal. Typically with our parks, we have some ebbs and flows as far as what the needs are and what comes up any particular year. Scanning down, I guess the main thing to take out of it is, as far as the expenditures go, we're showing an increase from this current year to next year of 51,000. 40 or 35,000 of that is EAB, and another 35,000 is actually staffing increases. So generally speaking, most of our accounts were either staying even or dropping down in expense. So the staff is doing a good job of trying to keep things under control and keep things moving forward. We're looking for better and more efficient ways to do things, especially as it comes to fertilizing and things like that. We're coming up with more approaches that limits the amount of fertilizers and that we're putting out in our parks. So as we continue growing, we're trying to keep those types of things under control. Any questions with the Parks and Trails component? Moving on to Simpson Barn and Crown Point, they kind of mirror each other to a degree. Obviously, COVID has really impacted what our usage of our facilities have been. And we are, as you look across here, originally for this year, we had budgeted $45,000 at Simpson Barn for revenues based on increases in what we were seeing. We've dropped that down to a projection of only $20,000 for this year based on our knowledge of what we've had already and what we're looking at, what will come in the spring if the end of April and May we can continue with that. With that in mind, we don't want to project revenues to suddenly jump ahead next year. We do know that bookings are a little bit slower, once again, because of COVID. So we're keeping that revenue line just at $20,000 for next year, just to make sure that we're not over projecting what our revenues will be. And then it will slowly project to go up as we go into fiscal year 23. Likewise, we're kind of limiting what we're doing as far as staffing goes. We're trying to keep those costs down. Once again, I like to look at the bottom line. So the bottom line with like Simpson Barn here is this current year, and you can look across here even, the current year we usually lose about 49,900 expenses compared to the revenues that come in. Right now I'm proposing that we're only going to lose 29,300 by cutting things as much as we can and really scaling back over the next 12 to 18 months for general operating. We'll be able to do that. And then you can see as we get back to fiscal year 23, we start scaling things back up to take care of those things as we grow. Likewise, as I mentioned, Crown Point, we're pretty much doing the same thing. We're scaling things way back and then starting to move things up in 2023. As we come to 23, we should have much better information as far as rentals and that, what happens this spring through the summer, and we'll adjust these numbers in 23 accordingly as we have more information. So any questions with those two departments? Or divisions, I should say. Okay.
John.
Yes.
So on the Emerald Ash Borer, I'm just looking at that line item. So far, so right now, this year we have 105,000 budgeted. And we've only spent $2,200.
Yep. The vast majority with our EAB happens in the middle of winter. We do most of our removals in February into the early March. It's much better time to do the removals because the ground is frozen and we don't disturb it. The contract doesn't disturb the ground nearly as much.
And so is all of this Emerald Ash Borer work contract work?
Generally speaking, yes. So the 2250 is the same company that we've worked with. But they'll do some tree removals. A lot of this is probably storm damage. I don't have the specifics, but we did have ash trees that were damaged that were showing decline, and instead of keeping them out there, we just had them removed.
Okay, all right. That's helpful to understand it. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions with that? Hey.
John, I had a quick question. I see that you had 0 for plant material purchasing. Is that correct?
For which account?
Well, it was back up there a ways. I mean, do you
Most of
normally don't plan on purchasing plant material to replace dead? Is that a different account?
Yeah, most of our plant material, especially like planting trees and most of our perennials and stuff like that, comes out of our tree fund and not out of just general parks and rec.
Okay.
All right, moving down to recreation. This is where we start seeing a little bit of changes as we move forward. As you'll notice, the main item of change is as we look at part-time staff, we start showing a little bit of an increase of part-time staff. First, this current year, it's related more to our outdoor recreation that we are currently doing with the DNR. But as we start transitioning to the end of next year and we transition to the following year, we start picking up some of the needs of additional part-time staff related to Ignite that facility. It's nothing that's real big for next year, and we'll look at 22, 23 as we get closer to find out if that number needs to change. More than anything, it's kind of a placeholder right now. But we do realize that as we get towards the end of spring, early summer of 2022, we could start doing some programs in conjunction with Ignite if the facility is open. So we wanted to have some opportunity to provide those types of recreation programs. Okay. Going down below recreational supplies, once again, you'll see some growth there. Once again, this is associated more with Ignite type programming in the future. It doesn't grow a huge amount for next year, but as you go towards the following year, we continue to step that up of any types of supplies that we'll be needing to purchase in conjunction with programming that we'll provide there. I will mention one thing in association with Ignite. For 2023, that will be the first year that it'll be 22-23, but July of 22 looks like it should be our first time that we'll have utilization contract in place with that charge of, I believe it is $375,000. Teresa and I are looking at that and trying to figure out where the best location for that. It may come out of recreation, it may come out of somewhere else, but that's for fiscal year 22-23. So that's one number that's not shown in here, just mainly because we don't have the specific location for that. So any questions with recreation? One thing to mention as we go into next spring in the summer, we may have a little bit of recreation that we do in conjunction with the town center, but we feel like we're going to be able to encompass that directly into the existing recreation that we have. Okay. All right, if there's no more questions with that, I'll get down to our decision packages. We do have 5 of these. The first one is the one I mentioned. This is the Emerald Ash Borer, the tree removal program. This current year, we are budgeted for 150 trees, and we already have that contract in place that we brought forward, I believe is September or October. This decision package would grow that number from 150 to 200. Thus would be a $35,000 increase, growing from 105 to 140,000. As I mentioned, this is the last year of this program. Scanning down to here, you can kind of see where we are at through November of 2020. So when we started back in 2014, we had 1,547 known trees, street trees that were ash. So far through our 6 years of contract service and some internal removals, we have removed 635 of those trees, which means there is a total of 912 ash trees still remaining. Of those 912, 518 have been treated, and that means there's 394 trees. You're probably asking 150 plus 200 doesn't add up to 394. We do expect to be able to remove 50 trees, give or take. That's about what we've been doing annually internally. We can remove some of the smallest ash trees that show the damage from the EAB, but that would get us to that total. What this also tells you is we do have 518 trees treated. We do know that not every one of those trees has been treated every time it should have been. At this point, most of those trees should be going should have been treated at least twice, and in many cases, it should have been the third time that they've been treated. So we know as we look at these trees, we're going to start seeing a decrease in the foliage and that of a lot of these trees as people feel like they're not going to continue treating them. Thus, that's why I kept 40,000 in for 22-23, knowing that we're still going to have some removals. It's just going to be far less than what we have in the past. Okay, any questions with EAB? Okay, moving on to decision package number 2. This go ahead.
Those are only city-owned trees or trees on the right-of-way, right?
Those are only city-owned trees on the right-of-way. Correct. Yep. We have very occasional, especially when we first started, we did have a few trees that were in parks that we also had to remove just to. In some cases, they were declining, and in some cases, they were just too packed together with other ash trees. For the most part, we are pretty much done with any park-type trees. So these are right-of-way trees.
So, John, just one last question on the EAB decision package. So that's 140,000 that you're requesting for FY 21-22. So would that line item go to 0 in the following year, or what would it go back to?
It goes back to 40,000.
Okay.
So it would be reduced from, it go from 105 to 140 and then reduced down to 40. Once again, that 40 is a kind of a placeholder where we know as we decrease the number of trees being removed, our contract that we'll bid back out, the amount per tree will go up. So we're estimating that at least internally, I'm thinking about $800 per tree. Right now we're paying total about $600 per tree. So about $800 per tree. If we remove 50 trees on average, will get us to about that 40,000. That's where we came up with that number. Okay. Next decision package, number 2, is related to recreation, and this would be hiring a new recreation position, but waiting until at least January 1st of 2022 to do this. Once again, this is pretty much in complete conjunction with Ignite facility. We know once we take over about 8 to 9% of usage of the facility, that we're going to have somebody be able to organize that, organize the registrations, the types of programs, those things. Obviously, we will not hire this position until we know the timing of it and we know that that it will be needed. But certainly, if we start up any kind of programming in May or June of 2022, the position's going to have a couple months to get things organized and get it ready. So that is where that position is. Any questions with that? Okay. The third decision package is a new brush chipper. One thing we found out very vividly this summer is you can't have enough of this type of equipment with the multiple storms that we had this summer, and it seems like the number of storms just keep increasing every single summer. It would have been really nice to be able to run 2 crews chipping and cleaning up storm debris as we did that. The other thing that this would provide is the potential redundancy in case we have a storm and our first brush chipper breaks down in the middle of the storm as we clean up, and typically it's going to take more than a couple of days to get those types of things repaired. So this will give us some redundancy to be able to always know that we should have 1 chipper available as we do storm damage. This is the general quote that we got from Vermeer on it, and this is the appearance of it. It's slightly different and more powerful than the one that we have currently. So it would give us a little bit more flexibility. Any questions with that one? All right. The fourth decision package is power pedestals at Terra Park. Although it's not only for Green Days, this is really the main focus of this is Green Days and the carnival. The carnival that we have for Green Days, every other city that they go to in Iowa provides them power pedestals enough to be able to run the carnival and all the booths and everything. We do not have that. I was hesitant to do this a couple years ago because there was a lot of hesitancy on Green Day's part of not knowing exactly where different things were going to be located in Terra. Now that we've had a full year of it and we feel comfortable with what the location was previously, back in the summer of 2019, I feel comfortable bringing this forward and creating these pedestals. It's an upfront cost that in the long run will save us a little bit of money each year because it'll eliminate the need for generators to be rented that has typically run the carnival. And with this, we did get a quote last year from Baker Electric to give us a general idea of what that cost should be.
And John,
Right.
John,
yeah.
So those power pedestals, I mean, obviously the Green Days is sort of the number one, but there might be other uses for other events that it helps kind of diversify the.
Yep.
Makes
As
Terra
we
more
grow
visible.
the activities, as we grow the activities out at Terra, it will provide opportunity for if we have food trucks out there along that parking lot at Terra, it'll allow them to plug into those. Anything that we do out there, it would give ample power to be able to provide. So, yes, it's the initial request is coming from Green Days and from the carnival people, but it certainly will have other functions for us.
And reduces the noise pollution of all the noise that's generated by those generators, right?
Correct.
John, at some
And
point.
those are. Go ahead, Mayor.
John, at some point, could you send us a picture of what we're talking about here? I just want to make sure that, if we're installing something on a permanent basis, and I think this makes a lot of sense and it's necessary. I just want to make sure it doesn't detract from the beauty of Terra Park.
Oh yeah, and this will be the main area that will be between the main drive coming into Terra and the parking lot. It'll be kind of in that tucked into that area. So. I will certainly get that information to you and get the pictures of what they'll look like there.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, the fifth and final one, I know you guys are probably dragging by now, is a heating, cooling system, an HVAC system at Simpson Barn. We currently have infrared heating in the upstairs of the barn, which tends to dry everything out. It's a radiant type heating that really you don't get warm until you have a bunch of people in there, and then it heats the room up a lot better. It needs surfaces to come in contact to really warm up the room. And currently the only air conditioning is in the basement. What this does is it creates a situation where it's really difficult to host weddings and larger events through the warm weather months, and having smaller groups in the wintertime is sometimes harder to keep the temperature consistent in the building. So this would allow us to have a service that would remove the radiant heating, remove the existing air conditioner, and have a HVAC system that runs throughout the building. So that is our fifth one. And once again, we did get a quote on this to give us at least an idea of what it would cost to get it done. The next three bid packages, I'm not going to really go through too much. They're bid packages for 23. I will just briefly mention that the maintenance one position, initially we were thinking that we would try to bring that as a decision package forward in 21-22. But once again, because of COVID, we delayed our hiring of our parks position for this current year until January. That position will be starting. And we don't have a good feel for, once we have that person in place, what does that do with the staff team and what the needs are going to be. So we wanted to delay this another year to get a sense of that. Then we have some more mower and tractor needs, especially associated with the town center project. And then the final one is that the floor at the barn needs to be replaced. It's in really poor shape, but the HVAC system really needs to be replaced before we do anything with the floor, because the radiant heating will just dry a new floor back out and crack it. So we don't want to do anything with that. So, okay. Any questions with those three? I guess the final ones, final couple is senior citizen recreation. The main thing with the senior citizens is it's been now almost 9 months since we had the seniors in our program. Obviously, we did not spend all of our money last year that was budgeted, and we're not spending all the money this year. So we do not feel like there's going to be a need to transfer any funds into this account for fiscal year 21-22. I think that's the biggest part of it. The one thing I did notice as I was going through here, and Teresa, I apologize, I didn't even put budget numbers in here that I'm going to have to plug in. Obviously, there won't be a transfer, but we still need to have budget numbers in here. So I will need to do that. Okay. And I think the final area is trees. This budget pretty much stays the same as normal as we have for the past few years. There's not too much variance there. I will say the only difference going into next year and the following year is we did this current year that we're in, we did not, we had a fund balance, so we did not transfer money in for this current year. But because we're pretty much going to be using that balance up, we will be doing transfers in future in the next couple of years. So with that, I think that pretty much takes care of Parks and Rec. Any additional questions? All right, if not, I'm going to stop the share.
Very good. Well, we're moving very close to 8:30. I guess the budgets that remain, we aren't going to consider this year. Or maybe we should. But let's keep it moving and see how efficiently we can get through the rest of these. Jim, city administration.
Regarding city administration, we've got a number of items to cover there. And we've already talked about the hotel motel tax. I don't think we need to do that. I will talk about garbage. And as the council, I'm sure, is aware, the garbage really is a pass-through expense. Whatever we get charged for garbage and recycling, we pay to the contractor, what we collect from our citizens. As far as creating a budget, basically I take a look at what the number of building permits we've had in 2020, add that number to the number of customers that we have. I usually put about a 3% increase, anticipating there will be some type of increase beginning July 1, but we usually don't find that out till like April or so. So 3% has more than covered any increases we've had over the past many years. So anyway, I just do that just to make sure that we have that expense covered. And like I said, the garbage and recycling are passed through. So whatever we budget for revenue, we also budget for expense in those areas. Any question on the garbage and recycling? Okay, let's go ahead and look at the welfare assistance, I think is the next one. Yeah. And the only thing we really have in this line item is the Section 8 housing. expense. And well, we have actually two things, Section 8 housing plus the Johnston Partnership for a Healthy Community. As I did with the economic development hotel motel expenses, I went ahead and put the number in, and basically the number that's included is the amount that we agreed for funding this year on the Johnston Partnership for a Healthy Community. We will get a request and review that at the January 4th meeting. So at least we've got some funding set into the budget, and we'll make a decision on how much funding we'll actually provide in January. So I just put that number in there. From the, we also have the Section 8 housing expense included in the welfare assistance, and that is a cost share between us and the city of Des Moines and other metro communities. And basically, we're sharing in part of the administration cost of providing the Section 8 housing. It's not a significant amount of money within that budget, but we basically pay that amount of funding based on how many section housing certificates we have, Section 8 housing certificates we have in Johnston. So that number is about $1,600, at least it was in the current year. And we don't have the numbers yet from Des Moines, but it's usually around $1,600 to $2,000. So that's the other expense we have on the welfare assistance side. Okay, transit. Teresa, I'm not sure about this one.
That's in there this year because we received that revenue, which shoot, is David still listening? Let me look that up real quick. We received $5,134 in October and $3,128 in November. Oh gosh, Adam, is Adam listening? I can't remember. All of a sudden I'm drawing a blank as to what that is. There's a grant.
Teresa, we have a upcoming art shelter for the bus stations on 86th and Merle Hay Road, but I don't know if that would necessarily play into this.
Did someone give us grant money to go towards that?
Not yet. Oh, well, is that where you put the excess COVID-19 business dollars at? Because I know we were going to use those funds for that bus shelter.
No, I'll look that up, you guys. I'm sorry. I totally forgot to have that ready.
So the next area is the mayor and city council budget, and really not too much to change there. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty much it's a status quo budget. The one thing that I did include as far as a difference is that under the miscellaneous services, we have $3,000 in the current budget, and that goes to our contract for our strategic planning. And we do that every other year. So in 2022, I've zeroed that line out. And then 2023, I've added the 3,000 back in, just anticipation of doing our strategic planning every other year. Other than that, everything's pretty much straightforward for these expenses, not much of a change.
That money came from the Iowa Center for Economic Success.
That is the excess COVID-19 business dollars. We discussed at a work session a few months ago because most of this money came from Polk County that was not spent, but it was dedicated for Johnston businesses that we were going to use it towards those bus art shelters. So
okay, that's what that money is. Sorry, Jim.
Well, that's fine. Glad you found that. The next item is the city administrator's budgets, and not many significant changes there. It's basically sort of a status quo budget, and there really wasn't changes that are proposed.
Well, there's a big one there, Jim. Remember we saved big money in your budget by taking the software and technical services and removing it. That line item up there, 64,173, up under contractual services. We have $42,000 in this year's budget, and you'll see 0 in next year's budget and the year after. It's because we created a new department that's just for IT, so that we can hopefully try to consolidate in one department area all of the IT services. We pay maintenance for our finance software, we pay maintenance for our GIS software, we pay maintenance for all of our different things. And so this was our first attempt, and it used to come out of Jim's budget in water and sewer. And so we pulled that out of Jim's operating budget, created a new department budget, and then we pulled out of the water and sewer department budgets the amount we used to have in their department for buying the overall city computers. They were in the 3 areas as well. So here's the new department for information technology, just to start with, software services, and then the computers for general replacement throughout the city. So that was something new. So when you saw Jim's summary on the program summary, his department budget went down by $51,000. So he was looking good. Remember, Jim, you were going to tell him that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I forgot about that change, because I don't typically, you guys add the numbers in that part of the budget, so I didn't have that on my notes. But yes, and it makes sense, I think, to bring that out and have that specific line item for AT services. So I guess that would be the significant change in the administrator's budget. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the communication.
Right.
That would
I think Janet's on, hopefully on.
Yep, I'm on.
Okay. Her overall operating budget really didn't change a great deal, other than, if you recall, that she has a position being added this year. Same story with Janet's replacing of that position, or adding that position, as some of the other departments we've been holding off because of COVID. We have narrowed it down now, and hopefully we'll be getting interviews scheduled right after the first of the year. So get somebody hopefully on board for the second half of the year. So her full department budget with salaries for the 2 individuals would be in this budget, but their wages are split general, water, sewer, just like the rest of us administrative people. So I don't remember, Janet, if you had any other major changes within the operating line items.
Nope, there were no major changes, just the areas where you see an increase, for example, in the staff development areas. That was just to include the communication specialist, the new person that will be hired. And also in the contractual services, you'll see an increase each of the next 2 years. I just have a 5% increase because that's standard, what we typically see. And the line item where it says citizen survey, we did a survey this year. So next year we wouldn't do it in that budget, but we would the following year. And I plugged in the 22,000 that includes for this community survey as well as the business survey.
Okay, great.
And that was, and then another example, or up above, the photography, I had a decision package last year to do more video. Unfortunately, this year with COVID, it's been difficult to get together with all of the departments, but I did decrease that back down to the original amount that it was, in hopes that the new person that we do hire has more of those skills and be able to put some videos together for the departments. Does anyone have any questions? And I tried to be pretty detailed in the items on specifically what's in all of those. So All right, I just have two decision packages tonight. The very first one is in regards to new camera equipment and new lenses. Our camera that we have currently, my predecessor had purchased that camera when she first started in that position. The camera has aged. And oftentimes, I think the mayor has experienced this when I've done some videos with her. It turns off occasionally. I've purchased some new batteries for it, but that hasn't helped. So we need to upgrade that equipment. And especially if we're going to have new things going on in the Johnston Town Center, Kites on the Green, and different things going on at Terra Park. If we expand our parks and rec, it would be great to be able to have some different lenses for the camera. And I did reach out to some of the communicators in my 3CMA group, some people that shoot video within those different departments. And they said that the base camera is anywhere from $2,600 to $4,700. So that's why you see such an extensive budget for the 7,500, because the base camera, and then you add on those lenses that could be anywhere from $800 to $1,000 for those good lenses. That's why the budget is $7,500. So, and this next one, and if the chiefs want to, each of the chiefs want to say anything about this in the end, feel free, but this one I'm super excited about. So Civic Ready is kind of an extension. If you think about it, Civic Plus is our website that we host now, and they have different packages under there that people can, cities can use. And one of them is Civic Ready. Right now, we can send out information through Civic Engage. However, that system is not set up for SMS. So the email notifications or the text messages that you may receive when I push out some notifications, it could take up to 1 to 2 hours for people to receive those. Now, in the event of an emergency, that is extremely concerning to me. And so when I talked with Civic Ready, it allows us to send unlimited amount of text messages and messages out. So right now we have to buy them in bulk of 500. So last year we exceeded that number. And so we had to buy another package of 500 in order for people to sign up for text messages. Now this program is fairly new to the Midwest. I asked them what cities currently in Iowa use this. The city of Pella and Northern Iowa Community College and Stellar Industries are one of them, but they're trying to get it more marketed here in the Midwest. One great thing about this system, it allows you to do multi-language communications, which our system now does not do. It allows 60 plus languages to be translated via text and 20 plus languages to be translated via voice. One huge thing that I think is great with this, it allows us to do map regions using the Esri mapping. So I know when parks, when they have notifications regarding controlled burning, we are able to put a bubble around that area where they're going to do the burning and send out notifications. If there's a water main break within Public Works, we can also do the same thing. But I think one big thing, and I know this looks very expensive, but in the event of emergency, say we have an active shooter or a major fire within the city, to notify those people within our community, this system would allow us to do that because it allows us to put a bubble around that. Anyone coming into, say they're in West Des Moines and they're coming into Johnston, and they come within that bubble that we have set, it automatically sends them notification. Right now, unless they're looking at social media, or if they're not signed up on our system now, they will not receive that.
Janet, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So like during that flood in 2018 on June 30th, the big rain, the 7-9-inch rain.
Yep.
You could have used this service to let people who were on the road. It happened that Saturday night when roads were closing, right?
I certainly could. Yeah.
That would have been great for me. I was stuck on the interstate for hours, so I would have appreciated this service.
Yeah, and it'll send out the text messages, and which is great. I mean, we have that service now, but one of the system, it allows 60,000 text messages per minute, 50,000 emails per minute, and 12,000 calls per minute. And so if you sign up and you want them to call you, right now our system, we don't have a system that does that, where it will send you an automated message if you've gotten those from people. And one great thing in terms of communications, we can respond back. So say someone sends us an email or sends us a text message, we can respond back and communicate with that person. All residents that are currently signed up with Engage will then transfer over to this Civic Ready system, so we're not losing anyone. And another great thing, it allows admin users to access the full power of Civic Ready on a mobile device. So right now, if I'm not in the office and we had a major incident happen, and I was in another city, and didn't have my computer, I couldn't send out a notification. I can do that right from my phone, which is huge, I think, in terms of communication, especially where we're moving. And it's a cloud-based software. So Suresh, I figured you might appreciate that. And we can also use it for internal communication. Right now, we send out internal communication via email, but this system will allow us to send out communications if we needs to push something out to all employees internally. We can then run reports and see, the number of people who opened it and who opened that information. So I'm super excited. Do either of the chiefs want to say anything about this system? I talked a little bit to make sure that they were on board with, in terms of, the fire aspect of it.
Hey, Janet, a quick correction on that decision package you have. The package costs refers to new camera lens and tripod. It is not a camera, right? It's a web-based system.
The first decision package or this one?
Yeah, well, that was, I think you just carried it over, Janet.
I did, sorry, I didn't change that out. I think if you scroll down, I'm sorry, I apologize for that.
Yeah, I understood. I think there was just a paste.
Yeah, it was carryover. In the very last page, I think I have it kind of broken up in that total amount.
Okay. Yeah, that's just a correction. That works.
Yep, right here. So you can see what that total amount is. Yeah, the geofencing, I would have to say, is, I think, huge for our city, because right now when a water main break happens, we push those out, on Nextdoor. Everyone might not be signed up for Nextdoor, so they might not receive that notification, and then social media and our website. But this system would allow, and if we don't have the addresses, it can also somehow look up those people and still send out if they're within that area. So
yep, I like that geofencing ability. It's really helps to.
And I think, looking at this last year when we had 3 storm things come through, and sometimes we narrowed that area into where the pickup was going to be. Then next year, instead of sending it out to all the cities and then, people saying they want their debris picked up, we could just, and I can either do a bubble or I can manually draw it around there. And then it would just send the notification to those people. So.
Impressive. It's really good.
Yeah.
Cindy made a suggestion to me that, this is possibly one of those decision packages. You might want to use some of that CARES money we got for relief for the community. So.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yep. And this would be, so my first decision package would just be a one-time. This would be an ongoing. This number 2. So I kind of consider it a silo of communications. It would do everything. And one thing I guess I forgot to mention is it would also allow us to push all the notifications out on our social media channels all in one place. Right now I have to individually go, and push that communication out on all these channels. So this would help me in terms of communication to streamline all of that.
So Janet, quick question on that geofencing. So when you push it out to every resident of Johnston, you need to get that information from them, or the citizens should sign up for this?
Yeah, they would just sign up on for it on our website. So the city of it will look similar to what we have today. If you go look at the city of Pella, you utilize this. So it looks slightly different, but it looks, close to what we have today, where they can sign up via text message, voice, or via email.
Okay.
It's just a little bit more robust system. So.
Sure.
But it is an ongoing. So the 10,000 would be an annual cost. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Just for my helping figure out which of these, equipment type things are one time and which are ongoing. It's just helpful to kind of characterize it and kind of know where each goes. So.
Janet, quick question, and feel free to follow up because it's really random, but on the TVI software, one, like obviously super needed and helpful. I saw during the police presentation earlier that we also were purchasing that software. Is that like a user type agreement, or I guess the point of my question is just if there's a way to combine, if we do like a family membership or something, that might be a little way to save a little ongoing expenses. So that's just one thing. And then the second thing I just wanted to note is one, I was so glad to see the video and camera equipment decision package. And in addition to that equipment, what you had listed with the entire suite of Adobe software, I think that takes like a lot of foresight and planning in terms of setting up, whoever a new comms person will be. And actually having kind of industry standard tools like that is really important. So just want to pass a note of appreciation for that thoughtfulness.
Thank you. Yeah, Adobe is a great program, but it's very robust too, but it helps me a lot with my video editing and photography editing. So.
Janet, can you tell me real quick, when did you say you were going to be advertising for this position?
Oh, it's already advertised. We already, we pushed it out, I think in October.
Yep, end of October.
Oh, so you've already gone through your interviews?
We have not gone through the interview process yet. It'll be happening sometime early January. So we've narrowed down the candidates internally, but we haven't brought them in yet for internal interviews. I would love to bring them in for in-person interviews, and so hopefully we can have that happen in January.
Thanks, Janet.
You're welcome.
Here's that information technology department budget that we mentioned earlier.
This is, I'll just say this is really kind of preliminary. We kind of threw this together right before the budget, before budgets were due. So this will get refined over time as we add in, various software things that we use. This will get added into there. Right now, these two line items that are in there really fund hardware for everybody but public safety. And then our consultant for tech services. That's all that's encompassed in these line items right now. So as we work through this and more clearly identify who's paying what for software, this will help give us some visibility into what our actual expenses are for those kind of things. And then for the city clerk budget, nothing really extraordinary. I upped a couple of things, about 3%, legal publications, those kind of things. Nothing really dramatic, and I do not have any decision packages.
For finance department, same thing. Nothing really increased. I did bump up slightly the expenses for the audit and finance expenses when we do the S&P rating and we have the disclosure attorney fees and those types of things. Those come out of my department budget. You'll see we have a little bit of revenue coming into my department. We are receiving we continue to receive revenue share for our P card program. And so we've used that money to buy financial software upgrades. And then just recently we've been getting about $50 to maybe $200 or $300 a month restitution money, just in case you're interested. That's about it for my department. No decision packages in this year. And this is a council reserve. This is where sometimes you folks have decided you want to do some sort of program. Thus, last year, this is where the 50th anniversary expenditures and revenues and donations came through. And Kites on the Green comes through this fund as well. occasionally you have purchased other hardware or software items, but and then we've transferred money in from the general fund to support those things, but it's not a regular activity or a regular transfer anymore. This is the employee clothing Jim mentioned earlier that we all have with our Johnston logo on it. And keep going, Cindy. This assessment reserve fund, this is the fund where that Section 8 housing expense comes out of that Jim mentioned earlier that he thought was in welfare assistance under just regular general fund. It's in welfare assistance under the assessment reserve fund, just because apparently that's where we had the cash available. So this is that fund I've talked about just a few times in council meetings where we have some money in the bank that was used for a program years ago that might have helped citizens who couldn't afford their assessments. We just continue to leave that money there in case you choose to run have that type of program again. $142, you've seen that fund throughout. You can keep going, Cindy, but you've seen that fund throughout department budgets. The 142 is the actual fund for the employee benefits special revenue levy. So if you've seen that in other departments' work papers, that's what the fund 142 was for. Keep going.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. So the rest of the areas of the budget we haven't talked about are the capital equipment plan and the regular scheduled transfers, and I can cover those during a work session or under staff comments at budget meeting.
Does anybody want Teresa to cover those tonight?
I would suggest doing it at a work session. I think it's a little bit more easier to focus than it is at 9 o'clock. But it's been a very nice opportunity to hear a lot of good things tonight. So the capital equipment thing is always pretty confusing. So trying to do it at 9 o'clock is, most of you guys are smarter than me, so you can figure it out right away. But I need I need a full focus.
I'm glad you said that, Tom, because I was not, I'm done focusing, you know, numbers.
I know, exactly.
I was kind of kidding when I asked that question. So Jim, is there anything else that we need to take care of tonight?
You know, we've covered a lot of ground tonight, and I appreciate everybody's patience and good questions. And so I think it is really helpful for us to hear what is important to the council members, and that gives us some guidance as well. So I don't think there's anything else to cover tonight. As Teresa mentioned, we'll cover the capital equipment program on another day when we're a little more fresh. And you know, we have basically for the next few council members meetings, several items related to budget and capital improvements programs and those kinds of things. So a lot of the rest of the budget process will be spread out among several meetings, really really going into the meeting on January 19th is when we'll really start making some decisions.
So Jim, I kept thinking that supper was going to be delivered to my door, but it hasn't happened yet. So I guess
I haven't gotten there yet, Paul. I'm sorry.
We must have gave them the wrong address.
There we go.
I had to get up and let my dogs out by myself. I was hoping somebody would take care of that for me. But
Okay, well, I think things are going downhill. So I think it's probably time to adjourn this meeting. So if there isn't anything else for the good of the order, we will stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good information.
Night.
Thank you.